cover story. Do you think it's happening?
The face I am making right now.
Sorry. Just go. Just ignore me.
Aiden flung open the door in front of him and stomped out into the chaos that was the main concourse through the Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. The door hit the wall with a bang loud enough to get the attention of a group of giggling girls passing by the exit area of the laser tag arena. Aiden recognized the girls immediately. They were seniors at his school. The door rebounded and hit Aiden from behind. Aiden hit Aiden from behind. The girls like that's so.
Just we're off to a really strong start. We're already in the Pizzaplex. This guy storms in angry, and then the door hits. I love
But
him.
wait, if he kicked it in to enter the area, wouldn't it be hitting him in the face, not the back?
No, I think like he kicked it in to get into the area. Went into the area, and then actually, yeah, you're right.
That was
Unless it's like
literally
one of
what I
those-
was saying. Unless he like turned around after he kicked the door.
Unless it's like one of those like swingy doors that they have for like kitchens and restaurants, but like I don't think it is.
I mean, the Pizzaplex doors do open in every direction.
I think it was just phrased poorly. Let's just assume that the door did hit him back and it can logically work that way.
The girls laughed at him. One of the girls, a cute redhead, Nora, raised her brows and pointed when she saw Aiden's swollen left eye. Nice shiner, Aiden. She put emphasis on the second syllable in his name and changed the E to the O, pronouncing his name as I-Dawn instead of the way it was supposed to be pronounced, with more inflection on the I and E sound instead of the O in the second syllable.
That doesn't make any sense, but like usually kids are uncreative when it comes to making fun of people's names.
I think it's just basically a mispronunciation because you can say the Aiden, Idon. That's probably what he's talking about. Like she's mispronouncing it.
Oh, okay.
This mangling of Aiden's name was pretty universal in the school. It had started when Aiden, new to the school, had a wild idea and tried out for the talent competition. Unnaturally tall and skinny for his 15 years, Aiden was burdened with wild, bushy hair, a beaky nose, no chin, and lopsided eyes. He knew he was nothing to look at, so he tried to make up for it with unusual abilities and knowledge. Aiden was. I'm doing it. I keep saying. Aiden was an accomplished juggler. He had mad skills with the hula hoop and a jump rope, and could do things with a yo-yo that no one else had thought of. He convinced himself it would be a good way to meet people and fit in if he put together a routine showcasing these gifts and present them in his new school's talent show. His plan, unfortunately, had backfired. In front of dozens of kids hanging out to watch the auditions, Aiden was called onto the stage by clueless Miss Marchant, the head of the theater department. Idon! She had warbled when. Yeah, okay, so teacher mispronounced it, and everybody else.
When a teacher mispronounces it, then that's just your name for life until you graduate.
Especially if you don't correct them.
Mm-hmm.
Idon, she had warbled when he'd come on stage with his jump rope, hula hoop, juggling pins, and yo-yo. Everyone probably would have forgotten the incident if he hadn't completely bungled his routine. Oh, so yeah, he messed up, so it is kind of a bit of a combination of just mispronouncing and mocking.
Yeah.
Aiden had an arsenal of tricks, but they all failed him that day. Self-conscious, he'd ended up getting so entangled with his rope and his yo-yo that he'd fallen down and then managed to trip off the stage. Story of his life. Ignore them. Aiden's one and only friend, Jace, said now, "The black eye makes you look tough." Aiden snorted. He kicked at one of the neon squares in the floor of the walkway through the Pizzaplex. Yeah, right. Wait until Landon tells everyone how I got it. Jackass. Laser tag is supposed to be about shooting the laser guns, not hand-to-hand combat. He threw that elbow on purpose. Jace sighed and pulled Aiden, oblivious of his surroundings, out of the path of a group of kids chasing one another through the Pizzaplex. Yeah, he probably did. Newsflash, he's a jerk. Aiden, steaming, stalked away from the laser tag arena, bumping into people right and left. Again, with the right and left first. It's left and right! He barely heard or saw the phrase left and right, but they keep putting it as right and left.
Huh.
And it bothers me so much. He barely heard or saw anything around him. He was vaguely aware that Jace was trotting after him, but the bright lights and cheerful sounds of the Pizzaplex were being muted by the buzz of Aiden's rage. He was so tired of being treated like crap, like he was a ball trapped inside a pinball machine, being slapped this way and that by his classmates and his parents. He was tired of being a pawn. He wanted some control. Aiden. Jace tugged at Aiden's shirt sleeve. When Aiden ignored him, he tugged harder. Aiden! Aiden stopped and swirled on his friend. What? Jace's face tightened, and he hunched his shoulders, already small for a 9th grader. Jace could practically curl into a ball when he felt rejected or criticized. Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
It's Aiden, okay. It is Aiden. It's the way I've been wanting to say it this entire time.
Wait, what?
I went to go back to read his pronunciation. Inflection on the A-I and an E sound instead of the O in the second syllable. Aiden.
Yeah, that's how they said that it mispronounced it, though.
No.
She put...
No. Instead of the way it's supposed to be pronounced, it's more of an inflection in the A-I and the E sound instead of the O in the second syllable.
Oh, okay.
Now I want... Unlike Aiden, Jace wasn't bad looking. He had a normal face and perfectly normal black hair, but he was too cute, as in little kid cute. He was too small and too fragile. He had an unfortunate little boy voice to go with his looks. This shoved him out into the same no man's land of unpopularity that Aiden had lived in ever since he was 5 years old. The day before his first day in kindergarten, Aiden had overheard his mom telling a friend that she wished his sweet personality would overcome his unfortunate homeliness. Her hopes had been, well, hopeless. Aiden immediately felt bad when he looked at Jace's crushed expression. Jace was the only person who treated Aiden like he mattered. Sorry, Jace. I'm just pissed is all. Jace nodded. I get it. Sorry Landon elbowed you. Should have found a way to have your back, but he kinda outweighs me. Plus, besides the laser gun, all I have is this. Jace pulled out a Swiss Army knife.
Why do you... What? Okay, Pizzaplex doesn't have any, security. What the fuck?
Security alert! Security alert! Woo!
Like, if that was in Son's daycare, he'd fucking contraband that shit so fast.
And then ban you. You're never seeing that knife again. His mom had given him for his birthday. He was ridiculously happy with the gift, as if the tiny knife and his itsy-bitsy scissors and corkscrew and file and screwdriver could transform little Jace into an invincible warrior. Aiden punched Jace's shoulder lightly. Well, next time, pull that thing out and run through him through. Okay. Jace laughed.
You know what? Since they're just outside of the Phaser Blast, I'm imagining a human employee just watching this with a glazed over expression on their face, like they don't give a fuck. These teenagers are doing.
Jace laughed. He pretended to wield the knife like a sword. A little girl in braided pigtails bounced off Aiden's legs, and he felt something wet and sticky on his skin. He looked down just in time to see this little girl's huge smiley face sucker finish, swiping his forearm. Ew! Aiden. Oh, she's wiping her mouth on him.
Oh, okay. That did not come across as clear.
Aiden yanked his arm back and glared at the little girl. She didn't even notice him. Jace plucked at Aiden's sleeve again. This time, Aiden didn't snap. He let Jace pull him out of the flow of the crowd, back against a bright striped wall next to the neon-lit entrance to the bumper car arena. Aiden glowered at Freddy's themed cars. Normally, he liked bumper cars. They're a great way to let off steam. Today, though, some of the shiny little shoe-shaped pods painted to look like Freddy's animatronic characters were just too perky. What do you want to do now? Jace asked. Aiden pulled his gaze from the chaos of the zigzagging, careening bumping cars, listening to the cars buzzing and the kids whooping. He shrugged. So far today, he and Jace had played their favorite arcade games, spent some time in the VR booths, ridden the roller coaster, and stuffed themselves with pizza. None of that had done it for Aiden. He just wasn't in the mood to have fun today. Been ready to give up and go home and watch TV when Jace had suggested laser tag. Aiden had agreed when he'd seen Landon and his friends going to the arena. Aiden hated Landon. The idea of shooting the smug jerk with a laser gun had sounded like a good idea. Aiden gingerly touched his still swelling eye. He grimaced. So much for that good idea. Why don't we go tubing? Jace asked. Remember how much fun it was last time when we scared those little kids? Despite his mood, Aiden smiled. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Tubing was Jace and Aiden's word for clambering through Freddy's fortress. A massive maze of climbing and sliding plastic tubes that entwined with Fast Freddy, the Pizzaplex's super fast roller coaster, and embraced the entire circumference of the center. Okay, so
Okay.
we have multiple mazes. This is not just mazer size. It's not just the things inside the daycare.
Yeah, this sounds different than the other Pizzaplex too.
No, this is the same exact one because it mentions the roller coaster.
Yeah, it mentions the roller coaster. Like in the books, it's more like the Pizzaplex is more akin to like Mall of America rather than just like a super strip mall like it is in the game, I guess.
Mm-hmm. They'd only recently checked out the maze because it was advertised more toward the younger kids than towards teens. They'd originally gone poking around the maze because they'd been avoiding some bullies who had been hassling them in the arcade. At least you shouldn't get hurt in the tubes, Jay said, panting. HAPPS won't let that happen. He laughed, his patented girlish twitter. Aiden grinned. Good old HAPPS. HAPPS, Aiden and Jace had discovered when they first explored the maze, was a maintenance and safety bot designed to prevent injuries in the maze. HAPPS stood for Helpful Automated Pipe Protection Server. It was a robot that roamed the tubes, or pipes, checking to be sure everything was in good order and helping out kids who had fallen or were lost. Aiden and Jace got a big kick out of HAPPS. They thought the robot's huge, lit-up smile and large foam hands were hilarious. When they'd first encountered him, they'd wanted to adopt him. Wouldn't it be great if we had a HAPPS to clear the way for us at school? Jace had asked as they left the maze after the first time they'd explored it. Aiden had warmed to the idea. Yeah, HAPPS could just toss aside all the jerks. Jace laughed. And do our homework for us. And clean our rooms. He could do all our chores. Aiden chuckled. That'd be cool. And lock my dad out of the house when he gets in his bad moods. Ooh. Jace,
Ah,
Jace said. This last thought had sobered them. Aiden's parents didn't approve of him. They tended to ignore him. But Jace's dad was mean. There was nothing funny about that. Now, Aiden slung an arm around his friend's shoulders. Yeah, let's go tubing. Jace grinned, and the two boys stepped into the flow of the crowd, rushing from one part of the Pizzaplex to the other. As soon as they did, Aiden felt the pulsing heat in his temples begin to abate. He mentally shook off the image of Landon's perpetual "I'm better than you" smirk. The entrance to Freddy's fortress was on the opposite side of the Pizzaplex from the bumper cars. It would take several minutes to get there at Jace's pace. Small legs couldn't stride as fast as Aiden's could. I suddenly just got flashbacks to Sen's fortress in Dark Souls.
why?
Because it's a trap maze. Like
Oh,
it's just basically this entire building of traps that you have to navigate.
oh, oh, okay.
And
I never got really far in Dark Souls. I think I didn't even beat the first boss.
I need to show you a video of Sun's Fortress after this, so you know what I'm talking about. When Aiden and Jace had come to the Pizzaplex the first time, the place had been overwhelming. It was huge. Fortunately, though, its layout was pretty simple. Pizzaplex was shaped like a pizza. Under a massive neon. As-
It is.
I just kind of burped in the middle of that sentence, so that's why I was stuttering.
No, I broke because they're like the Pizzaplex is shaped like a pizza, and I'm like, since when?
Since under construction said. Since not under construction, well, actually, under construction and the epilogue of the first book did say it was dome shaped.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this is like a different Pizzaplex entirely. Or it's like the Pizzaplex that never came to be because Steel Wool had deadlines or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. The Pizzaplex was shaped like a pizza, under a massive neon lit dome topped by a black-lit pizza-themed stained glass cupola? I have no idea what that is. Because of this round configuration, Jace had told Aiden that he thought the Pizzaplex was a sort of a giant clock of fun. Because Freddy's Pizzeria was the inspiration for everything in the Pizzaplex, Jace suggested that the big dining area where the pizza was served was noon on the clock. Every other main part of the Pizzaplex was another hour on the clock face. Laser tag was at 4 o'clock. The entrance to Freddy's Fortress was between the carnival game area in the 2 o'clock position, and the arcade was in the 3 o'clock position. But there's two different arcades. Which arcade are you talking about? There's one to the east and there's one to the west. They cannot both be at 3 o'clock.
A different Pizzaplex. There's only one arcade, I guess. Does that mean that there's no Music Man? We only have DJ Dan, the Music Man.
They better have not taken away our Music Man.
It's not our Music Man. Well, like if Music Man is in the books, he's either going to talk or it's going to be like he's just like a creepy monster thing that chases you, and I'm just like, aw, no friends,
No friend.
no friend.
Unfortunately, when Aiden had charged out from the laser tag arena, he'd headed left instead of right, so he'd end up in front of the bumper cars, which was at 7 o'clock on Jace's imaginary Pizzaplex clock face. Didn't take long to hurry past the roleplay area, something Aiden and Jace hadn't tried yet, and the employees only section of the Pizzaplex, the behind the scenes editorial, storage, maintenance, kitchen, and security areas. After that, they strode past the shopping area, and then on by the packed dining area and its enticing aroma of pepperoni and onions. Even though Aiden and Jace had filled up on pizza already, the food still smelled good.
You
Is
know,
it?
I'm starting to think that like these books were written at development around the same time as the game because there are some areas that like because I know Rotzi's Raceway originally planned to have bumper cars
It
and
does
like
have bumper cars.
and it does.
Yeah, it's a small little area of bumper cars, right before the door that leads to Afton Hill.
I I blank with Rotzi's Raceway. All I remember is like boxes and police tape. But anyway, I was also going to say that the theater is like kind of like the role play area because they have like beneath the theater there's like
Oh,
stage showrooms
yeah.
and like
And the
there's like stage
costumes.
showrooms. Yeah, yeah, and like I don't know why they're there. The same reason why I don't know why there's a rehearsal room in the Pizzaplex near Rockstar's Row. I'm like, is this for performers? Is it for the animatronics? Why do animatronics need to practice? I have a lot of questions, and I'm not getting answers.
As they moved through the crowd, go-karts shot past on the track that ran parallel to the walkways and sometimes dipped under pedestrian bridges. The Doppler hum of the cart's electric motors was like a bass line to the crowd noise. Just beyond the dining room, the carousel spun in a kaleidoscope color and tinkling musical sound as they passed it. And just after that, The carnival games area bulged into chaotic crowds of laughing people, shouting encouragement as they tried to win plush Freddy character prizes. Finally, Aiden and Jace made it to the entrance to Freddy's fortress. They got in line behind two dark-haired little girls who were dancing happily to the music blasting through the Pizzaplex's sound system. With a neon arch like all the other Pizzaplex venue openings, the entrance to Freddy's fortress was long, narrow, and disorienting. Painted in a black and white pinwheel illusion pattern. Oh, kind of like the thing around El Chip. The entrance made you feel like you were stepping into infinity. You felt like you were leaving the real world behind, being lured into a topsy-turvy realm that would trap you forever. Aiden and Jace thought it was super cool. Maybe we should paint the inside of our fort like this when we build this summer. Jace said no. Aiden thought about it. Think we could pull it off? I don't know how to paint illusions. I don't either, Jace said. But we could figure it out, right? We're our own universe, aren't we? We can make whatever we want. Aiden grinned at his friend. He gave Jace a high five. Jace returned it. Well, yeah, that's kind of how you do high fives. You hold up your hand and the other person slaps it. It's a mutual thing. You don't give one and then you give a second one.
Like they could have shortened that with like the two high-fived or something. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, this is like the second time where like the Night Set the Tales of the Pizzaplex references alternate universes. Under Construction did too, and it was the only story that took place within the Pizzaplex, at least at the start. And this one also takes place at the Pizzaplex. And they also mention alternate universes, and they also mention things in the Pizzaplex that aren't in the game. So I don't know what it means, but I just thought it was interesting to point out.
Wheatley didn't appreciate it though because he was growling. Wheatley!
What? Well, Wheatley doesn't know FNAF lore.
Wheatley, you don't know enough about FNAF lore. We need to educate you. He's just pacing back and forth. Anyway. Jason and Aiden had been friends for only a few months. Since Aiden's dad had been transferred to the town and Aiden hated starting schools in midterm. Why couldn't his dad stick with one job in one town? Even though Aiden hadn't known Jace long, he was closer to Jace than he'd ever gone to his friends in previous towns. Aiden was a one friend at a time guy. Not by choice, just seemed to work out that way. Jace had been the only kid who hadn't decided that Aiden's jump roping, hula hooping, juggling, yo-yoing fiasco left him unqualified for friendship. Jace had come to sit with Aiden at lunch the day Aiden had so spectacularly made a fool of himself. Come to laugh at the new class clown? Aiden had asked Jace when he'd sat down and opened his brown bag. Nope. Came to meet the bravest guy in the school, Jace said, pulling out an array of plastic containers that Aiden would later find out contained a sun-dried tomato and crab salad sandwich on sourdough bread. Immediately flashes back to Mr. Hippo stories.
Oh my god. Why? Why?
Because he talks about Orville and sourdough.
I know that Mr. Hippo talks about like sourdough bread, but of all things, why is that here?
I don't know. Wild greens and raspberries.
I'm starting to think it's just coincidental, and Scott just really likes sourdough bread, and he forgot he mentioned it before.
Wild greens and raspberry, whatever the hell that says, and a kiwi vinaigrette.
Wild greens and raspberry vinaigrette, raspberry dressing. It's a salad.
Why couldn't we just say that? And a kiwi fruit tart. Jace had sophisticated food tastes. The only food he and Aiden agreed on was pizza, and Jace always wanted his with weird toppings like artichoke hearts and goat cheese and caramelized onions. They always
ever have goat cheese on a pizza? It's delicious.
Never, but now I feel like I should try that.
Try a Greek pizza. Greeks know how to do food.
They always got a half and half pizza. Iden was a plain
Mm.
pepperoni guy. After Jason pulled out his fancy lunch, he grinned and offered a hand. Took guts to do what you did. Iden had stared at Jace's elfish face. You're not messing with me, are you? Jace shook his head. I don't know how to mess with people. I'm just, well, me, I guess. Not that too many people appreciate that. But it is what it is. I'm my own universe. Iden laughed. He liked that. Well, do you have room in that universe for a +1? He asked. Jace
Okay.
nodded. Actually, I did read like a comment from someone saying that there was a lot of gay overtones in this story. So
Really?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just buckle down and drink some more of my gay juice. Okay, I'm ready.
The two had shaken hands, and that was that. They'd been friends ever since. It hadn't mattered after that bonding moment that Aiden and Jason have a lot in common. Jason didn't care that Aiden dressed like a slob in baggy jeans and faded t-shirts and dirty, scuffed boots, and Aiden didn't care that Jace dressed like a little adult in pressed khaki slacks and button-down shirts and old-fashioned sneakers. Didn't matter that Jace was more interested in art and music than academics, and that Aiden loved learning things and got straight A's. Something that contributed to his classmates' disdain. What was wrong with being smart? It wasn't a problem that Jace was obsessed with reading novels and collecting old clocks, and that Aiden was obsessed with his ropes and pins and hoops and yo-yos. They always found plenty to talk about, because Aiden liked to hear about what Jace was doing, and Jace liked to hear about what Aiden was doing. They did have some common ground. They both liked to watch old movies and shows on TV, and they both liked to play games, and they both loved Freddy's. They'd been thrilled when Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex had opened up. Fortunately, only a few kids were lined up to get into Freddy's Fortress. Aiden and Jace waited just a couple minutes before they were crawling into the first shiny red tube that led into the heart of the maze. Although the tubes that made up the climbing maze might have been designed for the smaller kids, they were large enough for adults to crawl through. About 4 feet in diameter, the rounded tunnels had plenty of space for even Aiden's tall, gangly frame. Well, if you can fit in there, Sun will fit in there. Just imagine Moon in that maze now. Aiden and Jace crawled quickly when they entered the maze. It didn't take much time for them to reach the end of the first tube, which was only about 20 feet long. At the end of that 20 feet, the maze branched out in different directions. Some of the offshoots had ladders attached to the tubing. Aiden thought of these as ladder pipes. They angled up from one level to another like stairs. Some of the tunnels had even sharper angles of ascent. These were studded with big hand and footholds like the kind on climbing walls. I didn't thought of these as climbing pipes. Some tubes climbed more gradually than either the ladder pipes or the climbing pipes, so neither ladder rungs nor hand and footholds were needed. Do you need to say hand and footholds? You could just say hand and footholds, because never mind. Some of the tubes were level, leading into far-off areas of the maze before heading upward, and some of the tubes were slides. Aiden and Jace liked those the best. Listening to Jace puff along behind him, Aiden pointed to one of the level tunnels. Let's go this way, he said. He wanted to get deep into the labyrinth of the fortress, as far away from life as possible. I'm right behind you, Jace said unnecessarily. Aiden led the way into what was now a bright orange tunnel. Although the tunnels were formed of transparent plastic that allowed you to see through them, plastic was tinted in a variety of bright colors, some solid-colored and some multicolored in mind-blowing patterns like stripes or polka dots or illusions similar to the pinwheel shapes at the entrance. A few tunnels were just plain clear plastic. Some were so black they were nearly opaque. At first, Aiden and Jace had hypothesized that the colors and patterns were designations to help navigate the maze. But after exploring the fortress for hours, they hadn't discerned any logical order to the colors. Various shades seemed to be as random in the twists and turns, rises and drops in the fortress. In addition to the many hued passageways in the maze, The fortress contained intriguing, ever-shifting, mirrored partitions. These partitions seemed to show up suddenly and randomly. The tunnel could be wide open one minute, and a couple minutes later it was blocked off with one of the mirrors. These mirrors fascinated Aiden and Jace. The first time they'd encountered one blocking a section that had been opened up when they passed it just moments before, they'd started trying to figure out the timing and location of the mirrors. They assumed the mirrors showed up to further confuse the already bewildering layout of the maze. They definitely had that effect. One afternoon the previous week, it had taken Aiden and Jace over an hour to find their way around one such suddenly appearing mirror so they could make their way back out of the maze. Now, Aiden led Jace past one of the mirrors. He paused at a junction in another tunnel leading to the left and a climbing pipe heading up to the right. "Which way?" he asked Jace. "Your turn to choose." Jace wriggled up next to Aiden and assessed his options. He looked to both sides and straight ahead. Because the pipes in the fortress were transparent, they could see into other pipes around them. To their left, a couple little girls were crawling around a bend leading away from where Aiden and Jace crouched. To the right, a couple tubes over, a tousle-headed toddler was being towed along by a clearly exasperated older girl. She's probably the little girl's kid's sister. Jace pointed at the ladder tube. "Let's go up. Maybe we'll find one of those long, twisty slides. I like those." Aiden grinned. "I like the twisty slides too." They started at the top of the 3-story high fortress and ended up on the venue level of the Pizzaplex. Because they wound around in a tight spiral, the ride down was long and fun. Unfortunately, though, to get to the top of the slide, you had to figure out the way to correct climbing pipes to get to the top of the fortress. Aiden and Jace had only found the top of the curlicue slides 3 times. Maybe they get lucky today. "You lead," Aiden told Jace. Jace nodded and reached for the closest bright purple handhold on the blue and pink swirl pattern climbing pipe walls. Aiden waited for Jace to work his way up the tube a few feet before Aiden started following it. You don't need to say his name twice in the
That is a weird sentence. Aiden waiting for Jace to work his way up the tube a few feet before Aiden started following his friend. What?
I would just put before he started following his friend.
Yeah.
He took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar smell of the maze. Plastic. The pipes in the fortress had a sort of chemical odor. I didn't figure it was a plastic.
You don't say. You figured it was plastic by growing through plastic tubes. You don't say.
In addition to that sharp smell, the pipes sometimes smelled like sweat or dirty socks. Ew. Layered over those smells was the scent of disinfectant spray that HAPPS applied liberally as he made his way through the maze. Yeah, this just proves that Son is forced to clean out that thing in the daycare.
The Son is forced to clean the inside of the play structures.
Yeah, because if HAPPS has to clean the tubes of the maze, he...
Yeah.
Skirting around a wad of chewing gum, I hadn't thought about HAPPS. He and Jace had discussed the robot a lot. They concluded HAPPS was a programming marvel. Not only was HAPPS designed to get kids out of trouble in the maze, it was also a janitorial and maintenance bot. His technology apparently was cutting edge. Aiden had read up on it after they'd encountered him their first time in the maze. According to the articles Aiden had found, Freddy's Fortress had been the subject of heated debate when it was first proposed. Smaller versions of the climbing and sliding tubes had been tried in other famous kid-focused pizza places, and they'd been a big disaster.
Other famous kid-focused pizza. They're talking about other pizza places, not the Pizzaplex. I got excited. I thought they mentioned the daycare.
I know what they're talking about, though. Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, yeah.
This is a dig on Chuck E. Cheese.
Isn't the entirety of Five Nights at Freddy's a dig on Chuck E. Cheese?
Exactly. They're just further digging into it.
Okay.
The problem wasn't just safety. Yes, little kids sometimes got stuck or hurt themselves when they fell. Once, Aiden read, a fire rescue team had to be called in to extricate a teen who'd been a little too big to round a corner in one of the pipes. Stuck kids, however, weren't the real issue at climbing pipes. The real drawback to the installations was sanitation. When they were first built in the other pizza places, employees were sent to the pipes several times a day to try to keep them clean. This job, however, was too big and too unpleasant for a minimum wage employee to do well. Hygiene became a big concern. Many parents refused to let their kids go in the tubes, something that led to frequent noisy public tantrums. Some of the restaurant managers had the climbing pipes removed. Pipe mazes were nearly phased out of the other restaurant chains. Eventually, larger pipes were built to prevent stuck teens, and better cleaning procedures are put into place. And now I'm having flashbacks to the one McDonald's I used to go to when I was a kid that actually had one of these.
Mhm.
Mm.
Like, my McDonald's had one too, and, like, I loved it as a kid, but then when I worked at McDonald's, then I had to clean out, like, a kid who pooped in that
Yeah,
area, and, like, you never forget it, and then, like, they're not fun anymore.
yep. Proponents of Freddy's Fortress had pointed to the relative success of the other chain's newest pipe mazes to argue for the inclusion of the Fortress in the Pizzaplex. Opponents to Freddy's Fortress had argued that the massive size of the Fortress maze would multiply safety and cleaning issues exponentially. The idea was nearly scrapped until the tech geniuses at Fazbear Entertainment came up with HAPPS. They could program HAPPS to be so efficient and autonomous that no human employee ever had to go into the fortress. HAPPS kept the entire network of pipes sparkling clean and hygienic and in good repair, and he made sure no big jerks got stuck. At the top of their climb, Jace paused to catch his breath. As Jace wiped his face, Aiden waited patiently. The climbing holds in the tube were placed close together so even the smallest kids could use them, and the angles of ascent in the tubes weren't extreme. It wasn't hard to work your way up through the fortress. Jace, however, wasn't in the best shape. Given that his only physical activities were picking up a book or tinkering with clocks he liked to collect, he got out of breath pretty easily. "We have 4 choices here," Jace finally said. "I don't see any sign of a slide." Aiden glanced down the lateral tunnels extending out from their current location. Nope, no slides. To the left, though, down one of the angled tunnels, Aiden could see 3 little kids. Aiden pointed. "Let's go see if we can scare some munchkins." Jace laughed. "Good idea." He crawled into the tunnel Aiden had indicated. Aiden followed. The new tunnel twisted sharply 3 times before winding around to a pipe that intersected with the one the little girls were in. Jace paused at the entrance to the intersecting pipe. Assuming a soldier-like demeanor, Jace made a series of convoluted hand motions designed to mimic those he and Aiden had seen in action movies. First, Jace pointed at his eyes, then at Aiden's eyes, and then at the little kids who were crawling happily, completely oblivious to their watchers. Jace made a singular gesture at the intersection pipe. Then he made a sort of crawling motion with his fingers. He used his other hand to make a larger crawling motion before dropping his second hand onto the first hand, apparently indicating a surprise ambush. Aiden laughed. Jason immediately put a finger to his lips and gave Aiden a mock stern look. Aiden stifled his laughter and pretended to zip his lips. Of course, all this pantomime was ridiculously unnecessary. If they laughed uproariously and even yelled their lungs out, the little kids would have barely heard them. The pipes in Freddy's Fortress were surprisingly well sound insulated.
They're, they're murder chambers. They're murder chambers.
It's never a good thing here.
That's not a good thing here at Fazbear Entertainment. We pride ourselves on sound-based tubes where you can't hear your children scream, no matter how much they try.
Apparently, the plastic used to form all the pipes in the maze wasn't ordinary plastic. Some kind of special polymer had been included in the mix to soundproof the tubes. They weren't completely soundproof, obviously, but they muted sound enough that between the plastic and the loud music and crowd noise filling the Pizzaplex, sound didn't carry far in the maze. Jace made a with me motion, and he crawled into the intersecting pipe. Aiden followed. They crawled about 30 feet or so before Jace came to a stop and held up a fist. Aiden grinned and obediently stopped too. Jace pointed to his right. They were close enough to the little kids now that they could hear them. There were 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl. The girl seemed to be the one in charge of the little group. She sounded really bossy. "We need to go up here first, Bobby. This is the right way," she said in a mom-like tone. "But I want to go down the slide," Bobby whined. "Yeah,
Bobby
me too."
boy.
Bob just keeps peering everywhere.
Bob real.
"Yeah, me too," the second boy said. "You're both stupid," the bossy girl said. Jace looked over his shoulder at Aiden. He mimed sticking a finger down his throat. Aiden understood. Jace had a bossy older sister. Probably sympathized with Bobby and the other boy. Jace held up a finger, then 2 fingers. Aiden positioned himself to follow Jace's lead. Jace held up a 3rd finger, then he pointed. Jace and Aiden let out blood-curdling screams and crawled furiously around the bend. They crowded in next to each other, with faces contorted into monster-like expressions. They reached out as if to grab the little kids. All 3 kids, who looked to maybe 5 or 6, screamed. One of the boys, a small kid with straggly brown hair, screamed louder than the others. The other boy, round-faced and dark-skinned, didn't just scream. He turned to scurry away. The girl, cute blonde with bright blue eyes, stopped screaming almost as quickly as she started. She instantly figured out that Aiden and Jace were messing with her and her friends. She'd been startled and screaming, but she wasn't scared of them. Sitting back on her heels, the girl put her hands on her hips. Wearing red pants, a black shirt, and a red and black striped headband, the little girl looked like a pint-sized fierce warrior. All she needed was a face paint to complete her look. The girl glared at Aiden and Jace. "You're mean," she said. Aiden lunged forward and roared at her. It was a good roar, but it didn't bother the girl at all. Instead of reacting to Aiden, she elbowed the boy next to her. He was still screaming. "Shut up, Bobby! It's just a couple of big stupid boys being jerks." This is Haley energy right here.
I know. I was about to say.
It's just missing the cursing.
Right. Which I don't think of as Bear Fright's book would ever curse because they're like marketed toward teens, but
Yeah, but still, imagine if instead instead she was just like, "She's a couple big stupid boys being fucking jerks."
right. Also, like, imagine like one Fazbear Frights book or Tales of the Pizzaplex book gets like one F-bomb out of nowhere and nobody talks about it.
The girl turned and looked at the retreating boy. "Get back here, Arlo. Stop being a scaredy cat." Aiden looked at Jace, who was staring at the little girl with a wide-eyed frown. It looked like he couldn't decide whether to be surprised by the girl's nonchalance or annoyed by it. The girl turned back to Aiden and Jace. "You're stupid," she announced. Stupid seemed to be her favorite word. Suddenly, Aiden felt pretty stupid. Why did he and Jace think it was so much fun to torment little kids? "You're bullies, too," the little girl said. She started crawling towards them. "Now get out of the way or I'll punch you." Definitely Haley energy right there.
Yeah. She is not scared of these teenagers.
Fierce little
Gonna pee
girl.
'em.
Punch the teenagers. Aiden didn't doubt the little girl would follow through with her threat. He nudged Jace, and the 2 teens turned to crawl away into another pipe. They weren't running away or anything, obviously. They ran from a 5-year-old. Aiden's ego wanted him to be clear on that as he and Jace crawled. So, why did they retreat so quickly? Well, for sure it wasn't that Aiden was afraid of a 5-year-old girl's punch. The real reason he wanted to get away from the little girl as fast as possible was that he didn't think his ego could survive being bested by Munchkin he'd been trying to scare. Serve them right, he figured. Scaring little kids wasn't exactly a nice thing to do. "Yeah, that's right!" The little girl called out behind them. "Run away and don't come back!"
You know what? She would have punched him in his black eye.
She probably would have. Aiden didn't bother responding to the little powerhouse. He was ashamed of himself. Apparently, Jace wasn't feeling too good about himself either. Didn't say anything for several minutes as Aiden led them through a series of several twisting tubes. Finally, at a junction with 3 new pipe offshoots, I didn't stop and looked back at Jace. Do you feel like as big a jerk as I do? He asked his friend. Jace dropped his head. Yeah. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Aiden gazed past Jace to watch the little kids and other pipes. Then he craned his neck to look down onto the main walkway of the Pizzaplex. Oh, so they're literally above the entire Pizzaplex. Like, this is like going along the ceiling.
Oh, shite. What if one of those things gives?
Well, I guess we'll find out probably. Maybe that happens. I don't know.
Well, like I'm starting to think because like they talk about Haps and how he's like the maintenance of this place and he's like help and assistance. Like maybe he doesn't tolerate bullying and like he'll make them have an unfortunate accident in the pipes.
Probably, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
He suddenly wished he and Jace were down there having fun instead of being up here trying to take out their frustrations on poor little kids. Not that that little girl fit the description at all. Jace nudged Aiden. Let's find a slide and then get out of here. Good idea. You lead. Jace nodded. He crawled into the nearest pipe opening. Aiden went in behind him. few feet along the new pipe, Jace started to lead them past a pink offshoot tube to the right. Suddenly, he gasped and faltered. What? Aiden asked. He squeezed up next to his friend to look down the pink tube. Jace laughed sheepishly. It's just HAPPS. He surprised me is all. Aiden didn't tease Jace for his reaction. He could see how HAPPS had startled Jace. The robot was only a couple feet away, facing a green tube that led off from the pink tube. HAPPS's big foam hands were pressed against the heavy plastic on either side of the green tube's opening. Aiden could see that beyond the hole, the tube's green plastic was bulging abnormally. Apparently sensing Aiden and Jace watching him, HAPPS rotated his squarish head and smiled widely. I'm actually getting some Music Man vibes from him, especially with the giant hands.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Also, like I forgot to say, but that's how the tubes were in Chuck E. Cheese. They weren't like directly across like the whole ceiling. Like there were a few bridges that went directly across, but like the corners, there would be like a tube tunnel that you would crawl up there above the arcade machines and you could kind of look out and like wave to your parents and yell at them.
That's what I remember too at Chuck E. Cheese, but from the way they're describing it, it's like this maze is huge and spans across like not only just the corners and around like the roller coaster, but it like goes across the entire ceiling of the Pizzaplex.
Yeah, and like the Pizzaplex has a pretty high ceiling, and like if this Pizzaplex has a roller coaster, the ceiling would be even higher. It would be like if Mall of America had like circle tubes throughout the whole mall.
It mentioned in under construction that it was only 3 stories.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, HAPPS said. Hello. HAPPS said. Oh, it speaks. HAPPS said in a chirpy tone. HAPPS' voice was robotic and stiff, but it was pitched high and came out in a cheerful sing-song cadence. I'm HAPPS. Are you lost? From what Aiden and Jace had discovered in their previous encounters with HAPPS, this was HAPPS' go-to first line. No, we're fine, HAPPS. Aiden said. I am happy that you are fine, HAPPS replied. Conversation.
I imagine he speaks like Baymats, kind of monotone, but kind of that cheerful tone as well.
Yeah, they said he's high pitched though.
Oh,
Baymax
okay.
isn't high pitched.
Yeah.
Conversation wasn't HAPP's forte. He was a pretty quiet robot. Besides his few simple phrases, the only sounds HAPPS emitted were the hums and whirs of his servos and the churning of the black rubber treads that he used to get around. The treads took the place of legs and feet. In spite of HAPP's stiff speech, he was likable. The robot was clearly designed to make kids feel safe. About 2.5 feet tall. Oh, he's pretty short. HAPPS appeared.
Baby.
Baby boy.
BB boy.
HAPPS appeared to be made of a combination of plastic, metal, rubber, and foam. HAPPS' torso was shaped like an isosceles quadrangle, a fact Aiden was proud to know. He liked geometry. And it was made of gray metal. A couple small doors were inset in the torso. Aiden wasn't sure what they were for. Articulated metal arms, gray except for black and yellow security stripes painted on the biceps areas, extended from the quadrangle sides. Why can't you just say his body instead of repeating the quadrangle multiple times? The arms ended in big white foam hands that looked like they were the weird #1 foam hands that kids wore at football games. A round plastic head sat on the short edge of the, oh my god, torso. I'm not saying that word again. I'm going to stumble on it. The head was topped with a flashing yellow security light. Although HAPPS' big rubber treads and gray metal gave him a vaguely tank-like appearance, his face countered that with an industrial look. Featuring bright yellow eyes, round cheeks of a more black and yellow striped paint, and a large tilted mouth full of backlit, grinning teeth, HAPPS had a friendly demeanor. As Aiden and Jace looked on, HAPPS lifted one of his big foam hands and gave the teens a thumbs up. Aiden and Jace returned the gesture. As soon as they did, HAPPS turned back to the opening of the green tube in front of him. Something clicked. A swishing sound accompanied the sudden appearance of a mirror. The mirror slid into place like a spaceship door, blocking the green tube. As soon as the mirror partition settled, HAPPS turned and trundled on down the offshoot, away from Aiden and Jace. As he went, one of the little doors on HAPPS' torso opened, and a third arm unfolded from its opening. On a telescoping extender, the arm ended in a curved sponge that wiped it in Pipe's interior as HAPPS passed through it. The arm moved so fast it was hard to follow. Not only was the arm sponging, it was also spraying the floral-smelling disinfectant that HAPPS used liberally. Sponging and spraying made HAPPS look like a little miniature mobile car wash. That was cool, Jace said. Aiden pulled his gaze from HAPPS. He nodded and crawled past Jace into the pink tube. He poked at the mirror that had just appeared. There has to be some mechanism here. He ran his fingers along the edge of the mirror. Jace crawled up next to him, and he, too, plowed the edge of the mirror. I don't think HAPPS is a wizard, so yeah, you're right. The mirror didn't come out of nothing. The boys explored the edges of the mirror for another minute or so. They found nothing. Aiden plopped back on his butt, crossing his legs. I think I know why these mirrors show up. Why? Before this mirror blocked the opening, I saw what looked like a problem with the tube. I wonder if they use the mirrors as barriers to shut off parts of the maze that need maintenance. That's really kind of smart. Kind of like emergency doors that close in a submarine if it starts to take on water. Chase nodded. That makes more sense than using them to confuse us. For sure they'd have some way of handling problems. They wouldn't want to have to shut down the whole fortress if there's an issue in one area. Aiden gave the mirror one last look, then nudged Jace. Come on, let's stop hassling little kids. Let's see if we can find HAPPS again. Maybe it'll lead us somewhere interesting. Aiden pointed down the pink tube. HAPPS was no longer in sight because the pink corridor took several sharp turns. Another tube bisected it. That tube obscured the view of the pink pipe behind the turns. But HAPPS couldn't have gotten too far. From what Aiden had seen, HAPPS' rubber treads didn't appear to be built for speed. Sure, why not? Jace agreed. You lead now. There has not been a pause at all in this entire story, and I am getting very tired. I need to take a break to drink.
Okay.
How many pages is this one?
If it's like too many, we can like save the rest for later. This one hasn't had any like star breaks or anything.
Yeah, let me just quickly look. See how many pages it is.
Yeah, because like it feels like we're still in like the prologue because like the suspense hasn't happened yet, like in the beginning of the story.
Where is the wiki? I want the wiki. Please give me the wiki.
I thought you were just gonna like scroll ahead a few pages until it stopped.
Okay, I can do that too. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on page 70 right now, so 115. Time to do math. 45 pages still. Iden nodded and started crawling down the pink tube. He led Jace around the bends, then paused when he encountered 6 different options. Because they were at the top of the maze, none of the tubes led upwards. Let upwards? You mean led upwards?
I think, yeah.
Typo! 3 were lateral, and 3 headed downward. 2 of those 3 had gradual descents meant for more crawling. One of the 3 was a slide. A bright blue, see-through pipe canted in the sharp descent. Hey, Jay said, panting as he reached Iden's side. You found a slide! Iden nodded. He looked at the other tube openings. He was conflicted. You want to find HAPPS again? But the slides were fun. I know what you're thinking, Jay said. We're going to look for HAPPS, but what if he went down that slide too? That's a good point. Iden turned toward the slide opening. Let's go for it. Iden flipped onto his butt so he could wriggle into the slide feet first. He listened to Jay slither into place behind him. Hang on to my belt loop, Iden said. Don't worry, I will, Jace replied. I haven't forgotten. Jace was talking about the second time they'd found a curling slide. About halfway down, they'd gotten split up when the slide forked and sent them in opposite directions. Fortunately, they both managed to find their way to the maze's exit pretty quickly, and they'd re-entered the maze together. The next time they used the slide, they made sure they were hooked together so they ended up in the same place. Ready? Iden asked. Ready. Iden pushed off the slide walls, and he and Jace whooped as they shot downward, whipping around a sharp curve, skimming through the fluorescent blue pipe. Iden felt cool air in his face, and for an instant, he felt free. Only could get that instant to last forever. Even though Iden kept busy with his whooping and juggling and yo-yoing and jump roping and he got great grades, he wasn't exactly happy. Truth was, Iden pretty much hated his life. He often wished he could have a do-over. He knew he couldn't change his looks, but maybe if he hadn't tried to compensate for them by learning weird skills, other kids would have taken him more seriously. Maybe his parents would have paid more attention to him. Maybe. Iden shot out of the blue pipe and landed in a dimly lit pit filled with glow-in-the-dark rubber balls. Jace stumbled over Iden, then popped upright. The two swam through the balls towards a neon-marked opening on the far side of the pit. As soon as they were out of the pit, they crawled into a yellow and purple striped pipe. It's one of the 3 options, and they picked it randomly. That was a good one, Jace panted as they crawled. Yeah, Iden agreed. He stopped at a junction with another pipe. He gestured at it. You want to go that way, or do you want to keep going straight? Jace looked at the nearly opaque pipe that led to the left, pointed down the yellow and purple one. Let's keep going. I don't like the really dark tubes. Iden nodded. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Iden continued leading the way and they crawled on. As they made their way through the purple and yellow striped pipe, Iden could see the other kids crawling, climbing, and sliding through the pipes to the left of the one he and Jace were in. On the right, the pipe's walls were mostly mirrored. Occasionally, though, a break in the mirroring gave Iden a glimpse of a huge knotted network of pipes that appeared to be completely empty of kids. After a few feet, the yellow and purple pipes started ascending slowly. They continued crawling, and they crawled, and they crawled. The pipe went up gradually for a while, and then leveled out. Iden figured out by then they were probably on the second-story level of the Pizzaplex. He thought they'd encounter a junction leading to the other pipes, but they didn't. Instead, the yellow and purple pipe continued on, now sloping downward just as gradually as it climbed upward. The whole time they crawled, Ida could see the other kids in tubes to his left. But on his right, the pipe was either mirrored or overlooking the apparently deserted area. The pipe they were in appeared to encircle a section of the maze that no one else could get into.
Yellow and purple.
Took me a sec, Afton.
Yeah, spring Bonnie colors.
Yee.
Yeah.
Iden wasn't sure how long they crawled before they found themselves right back where they'd started. They recognized the spot because they could see the glow-in-the-dark balls in the pit at the base of the slide. Wow, she said. That was a big circle. We crawled for 14 minutes and 42 seconds. Leave it to Jace to keep the time. Did we miss an offshoot? Iden asked. Jace shook his head. Besides the dark pipe, I didn't see any options. Aiden cocked his head. That means the part of the maze inside the circle we just made is like its own thing. Did you see that? No one was in those pipes. I noticed that. It'd be great to check it out. There has to be a way to get to it. Well, Jay said, if all those mirrors are partitions like you said, they're blocking the way. That means there's no way we can get in. I didn't look toward where they'd passed the black pipe opening. Unless the dark tube leads into the area. Oh, right, it might. Wanna go see? I asked. Sure. This time, Jace took the lead. He crawled down the yellow and purple tube until they reached the dark offshoot. There, he paused and looked over his shoulder. I'm with you, Eden said. Jace nodded and headed into the nearby blackened plastic pipe. The dark pipe wasn't straight. It switched left, then right, and then left every few feet, like a back and forth trail going up a steep incline. The incline, however, wasn't steep enough to require the repeated turns. It was just as gradual as the one in the yellow and purple tube. After a few minutes of this back and forth, Iden figured they were again at the second story level. Jace stopped. Iden peered past Jace's shoulders. The dark pipe had dead-ended. That's weird, Jace said. We've never found a dead end before. Iden scooted up next to Jace and put his hands against the smoky plastic, peered through it. You see the vague outlines of a convoluted matrix of pipes that was completely empty of kids. I wonder why this area is blocked off. If it was for maintenance, wouldn't there be a mirror like the others? Jace asked. Iden nodded. You'd think. Iden spotted a joint in the plastic. He prodded at it. When the plastic didn't give, he shifted so he could kick at the seam. Maybe if he could dent it, he could grab the edge of it and pull it back. What are you doing? Jace asked. I want to see what's in this section. I mean, it has to be huge. Except for the openings blocked off by mirrors, this seems to be the only way in. But if
What do
it's
you
sealed...
think's in that section? More pipes. You've been crawling around in pipes for 15 minutes. Something happened.
More pipes and maybe an evil HAPPS based on the cover art?
Maybe evil haps, maybe dead bodies, maybe Springtrap with a knife.
Who knows? I still have no idea.
Maybe mini Music Man. That would make me happy.
Just made his home on the pipes. But if it's sealed off here, maybe it's not safe. Ida made a face. How unsafe could it be? We're in a pipe maze for little kids. I mean, could be collapsing, and that's why they've been blocked off?
Yeah, it could be collapsing. It could be unsafe. There's many reasons to block off pipes
Move
that you
back.
crawl in on the ceiling.
Move back, Iden said. I need some room to maneuver. Jace scooted backward, and Iden got into position to kick in at the partition. Leaning back on his hands, he booted the plastic with his right foot. A sharp crack echoed through the pipe, and the seam between the pipe and the partition expanded, by about an eighth of an inch, if that. Iden grunted and shifted again. Tried to stick his pinky into the opening. The space wasn't big enough. Iden used the side of his fist to pound on the seam. Didn't give. He looked at Jace. Can I borrow your knife? Jace dug out his Swiss Army knife, fiddled with it, opening it to a file. This might be the best tool. He handed it to Iden. Iden stuck the file's tip into the seam between the pipe wall and the partition, pushed the file and attempted to pry the two apart. Didn't work. He switched out the file for the knife instead. He started stabbing at the partition.
You're gonna break your friend's knife, and he's gonna be sad.
Maybe he could cut it open. Nope, that didn't work either. Plastic was too hard. Iden closed the knife and handed it back to Jace. He positioned himself so he could kick at the partition again. Jace backed up to give him room. Iden pummeled the partition with both feet this time. Didn't work any better than his 1 foot assault had, but maybe if he did several times, it would weaken. Iden braced himself and kicked again, and again. Each time he kicked, the pipe they were in shook and wavered back and forth a little. That's probably why it's blocked off. But still, the partition remained in place.
I'm just marveled at the persistency of stupidity.
Aiden repositioned, trying to get more leverage for a more powerful kick. Before he could unleash the kick, Jace tapped him on the shoulder. Aiden turned to find Haps smiling at him. Hello, I'm Haps. Are you lost? Aiden felt his cheeks flush. He knew he shouldn't have been doing what he'd been doing, and he'd been caught by a robot. But still. Hi, Haps, Jace said instantly. No, we're fine. Haps' yellow eyes dimmed for an instant, then brightened again. His smile widened. His big teeth glowed. You are lost. I will lead you out of Freddy's fortress. Please, come with me.
I like that response. You're not lost. Is like, no, you are. Get the fuck out of my house.
I mean, they're at a dead end. And they're trying to kick their way through. That would be the assumption, like, you're lost and trying to force your way out. Let me help you, dude.
Right.
Haps reached out an oversized foam hand and tried to take Jace's arm. Hey, Jace protested. He jerked his arm away from Haps. We're not lost, Aiden told Haps. We don't need your help. Haps ignored Aiden. You are lost. I will lead you out of Freddy's fortress. Please come with me. Aiden rolled his eyes. Yeah, we got that. Thanks, but no thanks. We're fine. I'm sorry we were messing with the wall here. We were just curious, but we're fine. We can find our way out. Haps' smile brightened to a nearly blinding level of illumination. You are lost. I will lead you out of Freddy's fortress. Please come with me. This just reminds you of the way I had Sun repeat the same thing over and over at Bob.
In like the latest chapter that's like not published yet.
Well, maybe it'll be published by the time I have this edited. But it's just funny.
Yeah.
I just find it funny, the coincidence, just a passive-aggressive repetition of the same phrase.
Yeah, no, like I find it funny because I thought like the cover art, it reminded me a little bit of Sun and Moon, and like he really does have sun energy, this thing.
Once again, Haps reached for Jace. Aiden quickly leaned forward between Haps and his friend. He threw his shoulder. The robot skidded back a few inches. Aiden was so surprised by how lightweight Haps was. Encouraged, he pushed at Haps with both hands. Go on, Aiden said. Go away, we're fine. The light in Hap's eyes blinked several times. Haps appeared to look past Aiden and Jace, as if he was appraising the partition. Then Haps looked directly at Aiden. You are lost! I will lead you. Shut up! Aiden shouted. Kid, this is how you're gonna get killed. He shoved Haps another time. Haps scooted away, but then he tried to churn closer again. Aiden was fed up. Aiden and Jace had liked Haps. They thought he was friendly. Now the robot was being as bossy as everyone else, and Jaden's like, dude, he has a limited AI!
Because you're breaking the rules, you're in a place you're not supposed to be. You're trying to get to an area.
He's just trying to do his fucking job.
Now, Aiden feels like the type of boy who you say, Aiden, can you set the table? Everybody hates me. Everyone's out to get me.
I mean, now the robot was being as bossy as everyone else in Aiden's life. Because what you said is about to relate. Aiden's head would suddenly fill with the voices of parents and teachers and classmates. Do this, Aiden. Don't do that, Aiden. Hurry up, Aiden. You're not doing that right, Aiden. You're a freak, Aiden. With a shriek of frustration and rage, Aiden pulled his legs back and kicked out at Haps as hard as he could. Oh, now I know why he looks so weird and half of him looks so weird in the cover. Jace, his face red as if he too had lost it, squirmed around so he could also kick at Haps. Together, the teens pounded on the robot with their feet, battering Haps back against the side of the pipe.
He was doing his job.
Haps made no effort to defend himself. His eyes remained bright, and he continued to smile. He kept smiling even when the teens cracked his plastic head and snapped Hap's arms joints, leaving his foam hands dangling. He also continued to smile when the pipe started to gyrate, swinging back and forth as if no longer anchor. His smile went on and the pipe popped loose and plunged down into darkness. See! See! He was trying to keep you from being stupid!
Oh, I need to go to bed, but I can't need it there. I need that robot to kill them.
I need to know what happens now too. I can't leave here either.
It's like something happened, and then something finally happens, and we're like, not that.
But oh my god, these stupid boys. These.
Well, like, I remember what it's like being a teenager and like thinking that everyone is just out to get you when like they're just telling you to do stuff. And wasn't it Jace that they hinted at had an abusive father and not Aiden? Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I don't know. I don't know cuz like I deal with like a lot of troubled kids, so I would understand if that was his backstory as opposed to Jace's, but I don't know.
His parents just neglect him. In general.
I think so. He was just doing his job. He was just the boy.
He was just doing his job because he sensed you were making the thing shake. Aiden landed on his back. Hard. His head whacked something solid beneath him. Sharp flash of pain radiated. Well, at least he didn't break it. He groaned, and for a few seconds he lay still while he tried not to panic. Had he broken anything? Aiden intently moved his hands, and his arms and legs. Everything seemed to be working okay. Moving slowly, Aiden felt around. Her body still seemed to be in a plastic pipe. He could feel its smooth, curved sides. He could also feel behind its sides. It appeared to have broken open when it fell. Aiden elbowed himself into a sitting position. Jace? Aiden heard Jace groan. Are you okay, Jace? Jace coughed. Yeah, I just... He noisily sucked in air. I think I got the wind knocked out of me. Aiden blinked and looked around. When they'd first started the fall, it felt like they were dropping into total blackness. Now he realized he could see his surroundings. The lighting was dim, but his eyes were adjusting to the shadows. He could tell they had landed inside the area they had been trying to reach. Well, okay. This wasn't the most efficient way to get in, but they were in. Aiden heard a scrape, and he looked over to see Jace sit up. Jace rotated his head and scanned the area around them. Where's HAPPS? Jace asked. Aiden cringed. He'd forgotten about HAPPS. He looked all around too, but he didn't see the robot. HAPPS avoided the fall. No, he fell! He fell, and now that thing is probably fucking pissed.
Mm-hmm.
HAPPS must not have fallen with us, Chase said. Aiden looked up. Just as he did, he heard a hiss, and he watched what appeared to be a clear partition cover the space that it had fallen through. He blinked. Hey, Jace, look. He pointed at the clear partition. Jace looked up. He frowned. What is it? A partition just slid into place up there, just like it did in the other pipe. But it's not a mirror. You can see through it. Look. Jace rubbed his head, then tilted it to gaze upward. You know what? Aiden said, I think those mirrors are two-way. On the other side, it looks like a mirror. In the closed-off area, it's like glass, see? Jace nodded. Aiden looked around. I think we're the only ones in this section. What about them? Jace pointed. Aiden looked in the direction of Jace's fingers. Then he examined their surroundings again. It appeared as if Aiden and Jace had fallen into a junction area in the closed-off web of pipes. 4 corridors opened up off the junction, which was now sealed above them. Beyond the corridors, which were transparent like all the other pipes in the fortress, the main part of the maze was visible. Jace was pointing towards a group of kids who appeared to be crawling past the junction just a few feet away. Obviously, though, the kids couldn't see them. Two-way mirror partitions hid Jace and Aiden from view. Aiden carefully shifted onto his hands and knees. Well, we might as well explore. We have this whole area to ourselves. It's huge! Aiden threw out a hand to indicate the separate area of the maze. Jace grinned and nodded. He rubbed out a scrape in his elbow. Like our own town. Aiden and Jace feel. Aiden laughed. He gave Jace a playful punch. You're such a dork. Yeah, I'm proud of it. Jace gazed at the openings around him. Which way do you want to go first? Aiden shrugged. You pick. I don't think it matters. Let's just go and see where we end up. Are you not concerned about how you're going to get out of here? You were so concerned about getting into the area, you're not concerned how you're going to get out? Stupid boys.
I don't know. It's like, hey, let's check this area out. Oh, we're trapped in an area where there's like no possible way out. Anyway, where do you want to go next?
Works for me. Aiden gestured for. I kept saying gestured. Aiden gestured for Jace to take the lead. Jace pointed at one of the openings, and the boys crawled into the glittery red pipe. The red pipe led into a midnight blue pipe, which led into a rhyme green one. Some of the pipes went up, some went down, some seemed to wind into concentric circles that returned them to where they started. They climbed up ladder pipes, they scaled climbing pipes, they crawled left and right and straight. The whole time they were exploring, they could see other kids in pipes outside the separated area. Being apart from those kids made Aiden feel special. I liked it a lot. At one point, when Jace paused to catch his breath, Aiden pointed at a tube that looked like it ascended gradually. Let's go that way. We might find a hidden slide. After you, Jace said. Aiden led Jace into the ascending pipe, which was a deep, deep golden color. Beyond the pipe, Aiden could see the roller coaster track. And as he watched, the cars streaked past. As they continued to climb, he was able to look out to the rest of Pizzaplex. The higher they got, the smaller the people down below looked. Being up here, above their pint-sized forms, made Aiden feel important. Or at least more important than he usually felt. This perspective of the people in the Pizzaplex had always been available to them in the maze. But somehow, it was better now that Aiden knew they were invisible to the people outside the maze. He liked the anonymity it gave them. The month before, Jace had asked Aiden what superpower he'd choose if he could have one. Flying, amazing strength, teleporting, X-ray vision. I'd go for strength, Jace had said. I'd be the amazing little strong guy. He'd laughed and pointed at Aiden. Which power would you pick? Invisibility. Aiden had answered, without any thought at all. If he was invisible, he wouldn't be judged for how he looked, and he could go wherever he wanted to go. He'd be in control. Only if you were naked, though. Because your clothes would not turn invisible either.
Yeah.
Being hidden in this section of the maze was kind of like that. He and Jace could go wherever they wanted inside the partitioned off area. No one could see them do it. No one could stop them. Aiden and Jace passed up every offshoot they encountered as they climbed up and up in a continuous path to the highest level of the maze. They figured when they reached the top, they'd stay up there and look for a slide. It took a while to reach the top because they stuck with the slowly ascending pipe instead of opting for a ladder pipe or a pipe with climbing holds. That was okay. They were in no hurry. When the pipe they crawled through leveled out, they had a choice of 3 offshoots. First one they chose meandered around on the upper level for a while before leading them into a convoluted series of twists and turns back to where they started. They tried the other offshoot, and it took them on a long loop around the deserted area. Eventually, though, the long loop hooked up with an intersecting pipe, and that one led to a slide.
Kind of off topic, kind of related. You know what this reminds me of? It's like that Sonic fandom bit where Alfred as Eggman pretends that he's like lost in his own fortress for 3 days, and then he gets out, and then he goes back in, and he's like, "I'm back in the fucking building again."
I'm back in the fucking building again! Oh my god, I'm so
Please stop.
sick.
Ouch.
Oh no,
Please stop.
no,
Ouch, ouch.
not again.
That's what vibes I'm getting, because it's like they were out of the tunnel and now they're like back in the tunnels.
Honestly, at this point, if I was in this, I'd be like freaking the fuck out. Like,
I don't know. These boys are worms. They just like to crawl in the tunnels. It's like,
crawling in
we
my
like to
crawl.
we like to crawl in tunnels and nuzzle really close to each other as we're crawling through the tunnels. You're ruining it, bro.
Crawling. I can't do it now.
Well, like it's like you lead and they have to like pass by each other. There's no way that they're not like brushing each other's shoulders. And there's several points of the story where they're like crawling at the same time together and in unlovable hand.
Crawling in my crawl. My
Please
crawl will always crawl. At the top of the slide, which is made of burnt orange plastic, Jace pointed at the steepness of its descent. This one might go straight down, he said. Might be the fastest one we found. Aiden grinned. Let's find out. Just as they had for the other slide, they positioned themselves in tandem, and Jace hung onto Aiden's belt loop. Ready?
Yeah, and that too.
Ready? Aiden asked. Let her rip. Aiden pushed off, and the boys shot downward so fast that Aiden felt like they were falling off a cliff. For a second, his heart vaulted into his mouth. Adrenaline flooded his system. The adrenaline ushered a chilling thought into Aiden's brain. What if this section wasn't finished? Oh, now you're thinking that?
Oh.
What would be at the bottom of the slide? Thankfully,
Idiot.
Aiden didn't have long to fret about this idea. The slide dropped them in a flash. In the last instant, the slide leveled out, and they slipped off it, skidding across the slick, curved bottom of a clear plastic pipe that extended across the bottom floor of the Pizzaplex. When their momentum ran out, they came to a stop at a junction of two other pipes. Wow, Jace breathed. That was a rush. Aiden nodded. He shifted his knees. As he did, his stomach growled. He looked at his watch. We've been here for almost 2 hours! Wow.
What? What the fuck? These two boys have literally been crawling in pipes for 2 hours. No kid has crawled in pipes for 2 hours.
And not
You can ask
cried.
any mom. And not cried. No one has. Like, a kid would crawl like maybe 15, 30 minutes, an hour tops. Not 2 hours. My God.
We've been in here for almost 2 hours, Jace. No wonder I'm hungry. It's been almost 4 hours since we ate that pizza. Jace checked his own watch. You're right. He dug in the pocket of his jeans, and he pulled out one of the fancy dark chocolate and macadamia candy bars he liked. Want half? I didn't look at the...
It'd be melted. It'd be melted. You were crawling around in the hot tunnels all day, and that's been in your hot, sticky pocket. It'll be melted.
Aiden is even commenting on that in the next line. Aiden looked at the crumpled bar. It wasn't exactly appetizing, but he nodded. Thanks. Aiden got into a cross-legged position next to Jace, who was still sitting with his legs splayed where he'd end up after the slide. Two boys sat side by side in the pipe, eating the mostly melted chocolate and crunchy nuts. Through the two-way mirror, they could see into the dining area, which is full of happy families scarfing down pizzas and swilling soda. Trying to unstick part of a nut from the back of his teeth, I didn't realize how thirsty he was. I didn't fiercely wish they could get into the dining area so they could have a soda and order another pizza. As soon as he had that thought, another thought tumbled into his head. This one wasn't as nice as thinking about pizza and soda. This thought, I didn't realize, was a disturbing cousin to the one he'd had in the slide. In fact, it was a thought that had been nagging at him ever since he'd wondered what had been bottom of the slide. What? When Aiden had realized this part of the maze might not be finished, and he was glad he was wrong about that, another thought had popped into his head. What if this part of the maze was effectively closed off from the rest of it, so much that they couldn't get out? Finally!
You know, guess what? You kicked HAPPS to shit, so guess who's dying in the maze, motherfucker?
These two are two of the missing kids, I'm calling it.
And yeah, they definitely are the missing kids. And Court
Well,
and
Hmm?
the other girl that got trapped in her AR birthday with the Jello people and cancer. We don't talk about that one.
I don't think she was like went missing in that one. I think she just fell into a coma and they
Oh,
just
okay.
brushed it over because she was like still with her friends in like very public viewed area. So
Yeah.
hard to fake a disappearance like that.
Yeah.
Jace, Aiden said, turning to look at his friend. Yeah? Jace licked chocolate off his fingers. I think we might want to start looking for a way out of this section. Jace got up on his hands and knees. Oh, I've kind of been looking already. Actually, I thought the slide might take us out. Figured the way out has to be at the bottom of the maze or the top. We pretty much went entirely around the middle of it when we found it. True. But the slide didn't do that. You think? Aiden winked at his friend. Jace rolled his eyes. I'm thirsty. Let's find a way out. Aiden got on his hands and knees. He winced. Not only was his back still sore from the fall, his knees were starting to protest all the crawling. Jace groaned when he got to his knees, too. Sure wish we had some knee pads. Aiden laughed.
Oh, now you complain about that? You've been crawling around in the vents for 2 hours and now you just start to complain?
Yeah, that would be nice. He took a deep breath. Any ideas how to find an exit? You're the thinker, Jace said. What do you think we should do? I mean, it's a maze! The only thing to do is to wander. Aiden considered their alternatives. Finally, he said, let's try to be systematic. Explore every main pipe and try each offshoot one by one. Exactly! What do you think? Chase gazed out the enclosure of entwined pipes. This place is big, but it's not that big. We should be able to find the way out if we do that. Aiden couldn't miss the doubt in Jace's voice. Jace clearly wasn't sure he believed what he was saying. Aiden understood. He had similar concerns. If this part of the maze was deserted, that must mean it was sealed off. And if it was sealed off, that meant it had no exit. But maybe Aiden was wrong. You can lead, Jay said. Your memory is better than mine. You can keep track of where we've been and where we haven't been. Aiden nodded and set off ahead of Jace, visiting everywhere they'd explored so far. He led Jace to the left, heading toward the pipe they hadn't tried yet. From there, he attempted to make their trek through the pipes as sequential as possible, ticking off the sections on a mental checklist as they went.
You know how I have a feeling how this story is gonna end? Have you ever seen like that YouTube video, The Hole, where it's like where they're like, where are the boys? Oh, they're in the hole.
That was my favorite mug. Now it's in the hole.
Did you send HAPPS after them? Yeah, I sent HAPPS after them. Where's HAPPS? In the hole.
Unfortunately, Aiden wasn't wrong. No matter how many turns, ascents, and descents they made, they couldn't find a way out of the partitioned off area. It was Jace who admitted defeat first, and they'd retracted their path along the main pipe for the second time. Jace said, Hold up. Aiden stopped and looked at his friend. Jace sat back on his butt. We're trapped in here, aren't we? Aiden got off his knees and sat too. He leaned against the curved wall of the pipe. He let his head drop against the plastic. Aiden gazed to the other side of the pipe. Beyond it, he could see a little girl riding a Freddy replica on the carousel.
I'm imagining it's like a Freddy, but like a pillow pet, so it kind of looks like a Freddy horse.
But it says a replica,
Huh.
so it has to look like actual Freddy.
But how would that work? Did they mean glam rock Freddy or like the older model of Freddy? Does he hold
Either
them
way,
in their arms?
that looks weird to imagine. Because like
Yeah.
it's a humanoid animatronic, potentially bent to be crawling on all fours like a person. That
No, I'm not. That's worse than what I was imagining because, like, when they say replica, now I'm just thinking that it looks like one of the statues or trophies, and it's just like in a default pose where it's like carrying a child in its arms or something. But it doesn't look like it explains it, so we can only speculate what, like.
Let's just ignore that for now.
Okay.
Because we're going to be thinking too much for otherwise.
I'm going to say it looks like a Five Nights at Freddy's pillow pet. That's what I'm saying it looks like. Because imagining anything else is gross and weird.
Yeah. The little girl's head was thrown back. Even though Aiden couldn't hear her, he knew she was laughing. Aiden gazed at Jace. He noticed that a vein in Jace's temple was throbbing at the strobe-like pace. Aiden realized his heart was matching the rhythm. They were both scared. Yeah, Jace, I think we're trapped. Aiden could hear Jace's breathing quicken. The vein pulsed even faster. Jace's eyes filled with tears. He quickly wiped his face with the back of his hand. I didn't want to tell Jace it was okay if he wanted to cry, because I didn't want him to cry too. But he couldn't get his mouth to work. I didn't clear his throat and licked his lips. He opened his mouth. Before he could speak, a muffled scratching sound stopped him. Looks like we found HAPPS.
He's either going to try and help them again, or he's going to be super pissed off.
Well, imagine if he does try to help and he's just trying to help and they just keep running away from him, they just break him even more.
You know what? What if he's actually just trying to help them and they run away from them? They're panicked, they're hot, they're hallucinating, they break the pipes, they fall to their deaths.
Yeah. Oh, you know what this reminds me of, if it is the case that he's just trying to help and they're running away from him? You know that one Scooby-Doo movie where there's this one dude chasing after them, and it turns out the entire time he was just trying to return Daphne's purse, but Freddy, for some reason, mistranslated what he said as like him placing a curse on all of them. And that's why they kept running.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's like so funny. Like the dude chases them halfway across like the entire country just to return Daphne's purse.
Sweet guy.
Jace glanced over at Aiden. Jace inhaled sharply and spun around to look toward the sound. What was that? Aiden frowned and shook his head. Both he and Jace cocked their heads, listening intently. At first, they heard nothing. Then a distant scrape was followed by a faint crackle of static. Yeah, that's HAPPS. Both boys tensed. Neither made a sound. For several more seconds, they listened. Then Jace exhaled. I didn't realize he'd been holding his breath, too. He let it out. Jace glanced over at Aiden. Do we want to think about what that was? HAPPS! Aiden shook his head. Better to think about how to get out of here.
But okay, like I know Five Nights at Freddy's protagonists are stupid. I know.
I give them a pass only because they're teenagers, and teenagers are stupid usually. I was a stupid teenager. We were all stupid teenagers.
Yeah, I know we were all stupid teenagers, but how do you not have like the cognitive? It's like, hey, maybe that gumball machine I kicked 5 seconds ago that is somewhat sentient and patrols his house.
Gumball machine.
Maybe that might be him.
Jace nodded. He rubbed his face. Okay, let's think this through. Okay. We've been looking for an exit, and we haven't found one. Thank you, Mr. Obvious. Jace winced. Sorry, Jace, I'm not at my best. I get it. Several seconds of silence passed. Finally, I didn't encourage Jace to continue. Go on. Sound like you were leading up to an idea. Jace sighed. Well, it's not a very good one. A not very good one is better than none at all. And I've got nothing. Jace bit his lower lip. Then leaned forward. Okay. So we know there's an opening on the second level, where we are trying to get through that partition. What if we can find our way back there, and we work... Dude, that tube collapsed! How are you You're gonna fall to your death.
Ugh.
What if we find our way back there and we work at that seam some more? That partition might have weakened when the pipe fell. We weren't able to pry it open from the other side, but maybe we can get it from this side. I didn't frown. But see, yeah, he's smart. But that pipe on the
Okay.
other side of that seam is what fell. We'd have nowhere to go from there, even if we go through that partition. Jay shook his head. The part of the pipe that fell was only 3 feet or so long. If we get the partition loose, we could use it as a bridge to cross that opening.
That is so dangerous and so risky for no
That's
reason.
not even going to be wide enough to use as a bridge. Well,
No, it wouldn't be.
no. Well, we might be able to pry the partition open, but what if we can't get it completely loose? Eden asked. Jace twisted his mouth. Well, we might be able to swing ourselves across, like hang from the pipe on one side and then swing over to the other, like on the bars in gym class.
No.
I didn't thought about the idea. It was pretty weak. He and Jace were ridiculously unathletic. Even if they were strong and coordinated, broken climbing pipes were different from gymnastic bars. But did Aiden have anything better? Before Aiden could respond, Jace gave Aiden a weak grin as he pulled out his Swiss Army knife. And I still have my mighty sword.
And my axe.
Aiden laughed. He painfully returned to his knees. Okay, Sir Jace, let's do it. Lead on. Jace tried to keep his grin in place as he also returned to his knees. Aiden was effective, and he pretended he didn't hear Jace's occasional whimpers as Jace led them quickly back to the spot Aiden had tried to break through before they had fallen into this area. Although getting to the right place wasn't a problem, finding the seam took a little effort. It was, after all, just the narrowest of slits in the plastic along one short section of pipe. Both Aiden and Jace had to feel their way along the wall of the pipe to find it. As soon as they located the seam, Jace pulled out his knife, flipping out the main blade, and sawing a lot of the scant opening that Aiden had created earlier. Aiden could do nothing but watch. He had no knife of his own. After a few minutes, Jace dropped his hand. Not working. He rubbed his eyes again. Aiden leaned past Jace's shoulders to examine the opening. Then he leaned closer still. Started a little stutter of steep of joy, of hope. Actually, yes it is, he said. Look. Aiden pointed to a series of fine stress fractures along the opening, whether Jace had made them with his knife or they'd been created when the pipe collapsed. Aiden didn't know. He did, however, think, or hope, the stress fractures might have weakened the joint enough they might be able to kick the... Kicking is what got you into this situation! They might be able to kick the partition free. When Jace spotted the stress fractures, his eyes lit up. Do you think? Didn't finish the thought. Back up. My legs are longer. I'll do the kicking. Jace nodded and scooted out of the way. Aiden took up position on his butt, propped backward on his hands. He pulled in his legs as tight to his body as he could get them so he could coil up with as much power as possible. Then he thrust his feet out hard and fast. Crack.
Okay, I'm hoping like HAPPS comes for them and like he speaks like his first fully sentient sentence, like stop fucking kicking my pipes.
Imagine. The robot drops the first F-bomb.
In the FNAF lore.
Crack. Hold on, what's that noise? Oh, it's raining really hard again.
Oh, okay.
The plastic protested the impact, but it held. But it didn't care. He pulled his knees in, and he kicked out again and again. Breathing hard, I didn't pause after the third kick. He sat forward and looked at the seam. The cracks extended further from the opening. He was getting somewhere. He set up to kick some more. On the sixth kick, the plastic gave in. The partition popped loose at the seam, and it swung open like a miniature door. Behind Aiden, Jay shouted, "Yes!" Aiden grinned. Panting, he sat forward and started to grasp the partition. Surely they'd be able to free it from the other side of the opening, too. Help me, Aiden said. Jay scooted up beside Aiden. He started to reach for the plastic. Then he stopped. His hand dropped. He made a little choking sound in his throat. Aiden turned to look at Jace. What's wrong? Jace pointed. Aiden immediately saw what Jace had already seen. Although Jace had been right that the gap between the partition and the intact pipe was small enough to get across, there was an insurmountable problem on the other side. One of the two-way mirror partitions had been put up into place on the far side of the gap. There's no way past that. Ian collapsed onto his back, utterly defeated. Jace slumped next to him. Sorry, Aiden, Jace said. It was a dumb idea. Aiden shook his head. No, it was... He stopped. From farther along the pipe they were in, a whirring sound was coming their way. Aiden sat up. Is that Haps? Jace cocked his head and listened. The whirring sound was interspersed with a thud and a scrape. If it is, he doesn't sound the way he normally does. Well, no shit! You beat the crap out of him and he broke his arms!
Well, like, they heard the same noise in the tube earlier and they didn't. That was HAPPS from before. And now they're like, wait a minute. That might be HAPPS. Like, why didn't they connect that dot sooner? I don't know.
If it is, he doesn't sound the way he normally sounds, so no shit. I didn't stare down the pipes. Jace was right. The robot sounded clunky. Like he was damaged. Well, no shit! You literally broke him. Of course he's damaged.
They have short-term memory loss. It's like, did he just like forget that he kicked him and forget that he had a temporary siege of anger where he hurt HAPS because HAPS basically told him to do the dishes?
The robot's noisy approach got louder. The boys gazed down the length of the tube, waiting. I didn't realize he was holding his breath, and he quietly let it out. Beside him, Jace was trembling, breathing in sharp gasps. Why was Jace afraid? Wasn't HAPS programmed to help kids in the maze? Broken or not, couldn't he get him out? Shouldn't they have been eager to see HAPS? Nah, because now you're feeling guilt, and that's why you're afraid now. You're afraid the consequences of your actions are coming to get you, even though you've probably met most of those consequences already.
So it was like the bullying of like the little girl, just like foreshadowing, pretty much.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Jace got to his knees and aimed himself in the opposite direction from HAPS' approach. We need to get out of here, Aiden, he whispered. His words came out so fast they ran together. We need to get out of here, Aiden. Why are you scared of him? To process what Jace said. In that second, the danger that Jace had intuited became clear. From around the bend in the pipe just a few feet away, HAPS appeared, and he did not look happy. Well, duh. His face cracked, one of his eyes dark, and the yellow security light on top of his head sheared away. HAPS' signature smile was in place. The smile, however, was incomplete. Half of his glowing teeth were gone. His upcurved mouth had been shattered on one side. This turned this cheerful expression into a malevolent sneer. Even though HAP's metal torso appeared to be unscathed, the robot no longer looked friendly. Well, yeah, that's your fault. As soon as HAP spotted the boys, he spoke. Sort of. His programming had obviously been damaged, because only a portion of his usual spiel came through. What he said was, lost. Out. With me. Well, not the programming. I would say his voice box got damaged.
Yeah.
The words had staticky... Yeah, it's just the voice box. The words had staticky gaps separating them, and they weren't spoken in HAP's usual sprightly tone. HAP's high-pitched voice had dropped a couple octaves. His tones were low and guttural. They sounded threatening. Oh, so it's like, lost out with me.
To be fair, I would kind of run and do a double take too, because that sounds genuinely terrifying. But like, he's still just trying to help them, as far as I know. Who knows? He might end with like strangling their necks. Who knows?
It wasn't HAP's words that kicked the boys into gear, though. It was his hands. Oh. I'm betting the plush covering is gone.
And they're like all metal, and he has like claws.
And yeah, if he grabs them like he did before, that's gonna hurt.
Oh yeah.
Jay shouted, "Come on!" He began crawling madly. HAPS. Aiden didn't hesitate. He crawled as fast as he could in Jace's wake. Behind the boys, HAPS clattered and scraped his way along. Each scrape made Aiden flinch. His whole body was wound into a knot of tense terror. As Aiden and Jace scrambled through the tube, Aiden thought about the foam hands that always made Haps look so harmless and helpful. Yeah, it's that. Those hands were gone. Probably ripped away from when the pipe fell. The foam was no longer there to conceal the metallic workings they've covered. Without the foam, the robot's spiky metal pincers were exposed. In the few seconds Aiden had looked at Haps, he realized the missing foam hands weren't what made the robot a threat. Pincers had been sheared off as well. Set of mechanisms that could grip and be useful. Haps now had lethal metal shards at the ends of his hands. His arm joints were damaged as well, so each articulation was jagged. His friendly-looking arms had morphed into threatening metal extensions protruding from his torso. He was flailing the menacing sharp edges of the extension, stabbed and slashed the pipe. Okay, so he's basically an actual walking tank now, but instead of a gun, he has spikes.
Yeah, and you know, like that's 100% their fault because Haps is just following his programming and he's gonna do what he's intended to do, which is to drag them to an area where they won't be lost. Like the robot doesn't understand that grabbing them would probably kill them.
Yeah, in this instance, because they talk about how advanced he is, but look at Gramlock Freddy. Look at Sun and Moon. They're far more advanced than this. This way, Jace shouted. He took a left into the sending tube. Before Aiden pushed off to scoot down after Jace, he turned to check on Haps. The mangled robot was rolling toward him, about 15 feet away. Thankfully, Haps wasn't moving at his full speed. Aiden realized this was because one of Haps' treads was hanging partially off its runner, and the other rolling track was askew. This was causing Haps to lurch consistently to his right. The other track was working to put Haps back in the direction Haps wanted to go, but the constant oppositional yank and pull made it for slower progress than the robot should have been capable of. Slower, though.
Wait. I just had a thought. I know that like the books lean heavily on like the alternate universe thing and they kind of hint at it. But here's the thing, what if it's not? What if what if the Pizzaplex has been around for longer than assumed? And like these happened like way in the distant past. And this is like the incident that got the tunnels taken out. Lally's game got shut down and reconstructed because by the time Gregory goes to the place, a lot of places were shut down.
Yeah,
so it's not like,
maybe.
Yeah, so maybe by the time Gregory came, it was like the grand reopening where they took out a lot of things, like they took out the roller coaster and a few other things, you know?
Probably, because especially since these guys said it only just opened, but
Yeah.
in Lally's game, that was over 20 years ago.
Wait. And remember like the AR booths that they're talking about? A place in the West Arcade that's a karaoke booth, but all the screens are like static and they don't work and it looks decrepit with like dust and stuff all over it.
Yeah, it has police tape around it.
Yeah, and it has police tape around it too.
So maybe it was another attempt at the AR booth, but then something went wrong again, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think that's what they're really hinting at here, that like this was the Pizzaplex back in the day.
The heyday, when it was in like...
Yeah, like back, and by the time Gregory comes, it's way past its prime. This is the grand reopening. Everything's shut down. Nothing is working.
Honestly, it just makes it make even more sense than in our fic timeline that they depend like, okay, we have the 2 daycare robots still working. Let's try to make more money off of this. We gotta get something back.
They had a carousel, man. They were living it.
Okay. Slower, though, was a relative term. Oh, wait, I already read that. No, wait. In just a few seconds that Aiden spent examining Haps' progress, Haps had almost managed to get within arm's reach of Aiden. Aiden quickly flipped from his knees onto his butt, pushing off with his hands. He propelled himself down the sloping pipe, wishing he did that the slope was steeper. Although the pipe descended like a slide, it was an amoebic slide, probably intended for the smaller kids who were afraid of the steep, fast slides. Ahead of Ivan, Jace was also on his butt, his legs straight out in front of him. He was using his hands to push off the bottom of the pipe, attempting to scoot faster than gravity alone allowed. Iden mimicked Jace's movements. Behind him, a metallic thunk made a spot between Iden's blades tingle. His imagination provided him with a front and clear image of HAPPS' honed metal spearing Iden in the back. Iden was afraid that honed metal spearing. Oh, okay. He's imagining him getting stabbed in the back, providing him with a clear image of HAPPS' honed metal spears stabbing him in the back. There. That makes more sense.
No, it's a frighteningly clear image of HAPPS's honed metal spearing Aiden in the back. Spearing is the verb, honed metal is the noun.
Okay. But why would he think of himself in the third person? Wouldn't it be him in the back still? I don't know. Wording confuses me sometimes. This is why I always rewrite sentences constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Iden was afraid the downward cant of the pipe would give HAPPS more speed than Jace, and Iden were managing. Didn't help that HAPPS was now repeating the same thing he'd said when he first spotted him a few minutes ago.
Lost out with me.
HAPPS kept saying. Unnerving crackling surrounded each word. Iden realized it had more in his head than in the pipe when his feet suddenly encountered Jace's butt. Forcing himself not to think about the pursuing robot, Iden focused on his friend and realized that Jace was scrambling onto his knees. The descending tube had ended. I see a ladder pipe! Jace shouted.
He focused on his friend's butt.
Hey, slower on the ladders, come on! Good thinking, Iden said as he too repositioned himself onto his knees. Sparing a glance behind him, still convinced that impalement was a likely possibility at any second, Iden gasped. He was right. The end of HAPP's cutting-edge hands were just a couple feet from Iden's side. I hate it when it confuses me so much when it says he was right, and then it goes on to mention him like he's a completely different person again. It throws me off so much.
No, you're right, because the way you do that is you lead with the name and then you use the pronoun, not pronoun then name, because it just makes the wording clunky and a little weird.
I think you're only supposed to do that if you're talking about another person using the same pronoun to then differentiate which one you're talking about first.
Yeah.
Iden yelped, lunged after Jace, and groped for the highest rung of the ladder he could reach. He pulled his legs up as fast as he could and scrambled up the ladder behind Jace. He was climbing like a monkey with its tail on fire. The ladder wasn't long, maybe 20 feet at most. When Iden reached the top of it, he found Jace frowning at the two pipe openings available to them. Both of them appeared to be level pipes. Lost
out with me.
HAPPS' garbled words echoed up from the bottom of the ladder pipe. Iden pulled his legs off the ladder and looked down. He exhaled in relief. HAPPS was still at the bottom of the ladder. Because HAPPS had always used his foam hands to grip the rungs, and those foam hands were missing, the robot could only swipe at the rungs. His swipes were covering them up, cutting them away from the pipe walls. Apparently aware that his hands weren't working right, HAPPS thrust out his third limb, the telescoping extender that came from his middle. Tried to use it to grab onto one functioning either. At least not as anything that could grip. It, too, had been damaged. And now looked more like a serrated knife than a cleaning tool.
You guys really did a number on him. Jesus Christ.
Well,
Actually, no, that's appropriate because Monty falls from the catwalks once, and then he looks
split
like
in
that.
half. Well, this explains why Gregory was able to defeat the Glamrock so easily. But they're still they break easily, but they're still pretty sturdy if they're still kicking.
Yeah.
Which Kind of makes Freddy a bit of a bitch baby, because in that one ending, he literally just gets some parts ripped out and he dies.
Monty got like snapped in half by like a stationary catwalk. I still don't know how that happened. Like the gravity wouldn't have been enough force for it to do that.
I think maybe it's because he landed on a specific joint in his endo spine.
Yeah. I like to think that Bob gave them a little bit of durability upgrades.
Mm-hmm. That additional deadly weapon wasn't good, I didn't thought. But at least Haps didn't have a way to climb up after the boys. Which way do you think? Jace asked. Aiden turned and looked at Jace's tight red face. Jace's face was smeared with tear tracks. Aiden pretended not to notice. I have no idea. It may not matter. If we stay on this level, we might be okay. Look. Aiden pointed at Haps, who was trying and failing to grab at a ladder rung. Jace hesitated, clearly not wanting to move even an inch closer to where Haps was. Then he creeped up next to Aiden and looked down the ladder pipe. Aiden felt Jace's taut muscles loosen slightly, and he heard Jace exhale. Aiden started to turn to examine two pipes leading away from the top of the ladder pipe, but Jace grabbed his arm. Aiden turned back. Aiden, look! Aiden glanced at Jace, who was still staring intently at the bottom of the ladder pipe. Aiden shifted his gaze in that direction, just in time to watch one of the two-way mirror safety panels sliding into place above Haps. A swish and a click, and Haps was no longer in view. Jace and Aiden were now looking at a reflection of themselves in the mirror above a safety door. In spite of the situation, Aiden couldn't help but notice that neither he nor Jace were looking their best. Aiden sat back on his heels and tried to smooth his hair, which he now knew was even more crazed than usual. He wiped a slick sheen of sweat from his dirty face, careful to avoid his swollen eye. The hair around it was now a deep, dark purple. Chase, too, scrubbed his face, probably seen the tear tracks on his cheeks. Not sure if that partition is a good thing or a bad thing, he said. I nodded. I get you. One hand, Hops can't climb up here after us. On the other hand, if those safe doors are closing off wherever he's been, we're going to have less and less room to maneuver. I didn't think much about it at the time. I was too busy thinking about getting away. The pipe behind Hops was pretty torn up. It must be damaging things right and left. Left and right. Left and right. The phrase is left and right. I hate it. Why am I bothered so much by this tiny phrase? Chase frowned and nodded. So what do we do? Aiden had no idea. He looked at the two pipe openings. Which one would keep them away from Haps? Chase nudged Aiden. You have better memory than I do. Can you remember any of the layout in here? I've been trying to picture it in my head, but it's kind of a blur. Give me a second to think. How would you know where anything is at this point?
You know, like, I don't know, but he mentioned like one of them. I can't remember if it was Jace or Aiden has a knack for like memory, but like, I feel that's a contradictory point because they seem to have forgotten they kicked the stupid robot to shit.
I didn't lean back against the pipe wall, but instead of thinking about the maze's layout, he looked out through the two-way mirror that separated them from the rest of the plex. They were so close to help. Below them, just beyond the pipe they were in, two young boys were being strapped into the giant swings. Both boys were redheads, probably brothers. They had identical grins. They were having so much fun. Past them, Aiden could see the bumper cars zipping this way and that. Although the scene was blurred because of the layers of colored plastic separating the tubes from the bumper car arena, Aiden was pretty sure Nora and her friends were in 4 of the cars. They were ramming several cars driven by guys in leather jackets. It's a whole other world. Not just the bumper cars. But the social circle that the social circle that enveloped kids like Nora and her friends. Aiden had always wondered what it'd be like to have a place in that a network like that. Aiden pulled his gaze from the distant bumper cars. He looked at Jace. Jace, too, was now gazing at the kids having fun outside the maze. Suddenly, Jace got up on his knees, faced the pipe wall, and started pounding on the side of the pipe. Oh, you sweet summer child, you forgot that it's soundproof, didn't you? Help! He screamed. Help us! We're stuck in here! Hey! Help! Chase's panic was infectious. Iden started pounding on the plastic too. Help! He bellowed at the top of his lungs. Here! Help us!
You know, you know what? I wonder, like, I don't know entirely how sentient HAPPS is, but I would wonder if, like, they said, okay, we'll follow you, but don't touch us. We're scared. Like would that work?
I don't know. Iden wasn't sure how long they hammered the plastic with their fists and shouted as loud as they could. Could have been seconds or hours. Probably at least a few minutes before when Hayden's last help broke into a rasp. He realized his throat was on fire. His fist throbbed. Iden put his head in his hands. Jace was still shouting, but his voice was getting hoarse. Strikes on the plastic were weakening. Iden touched Jace's arms. Jace whipped around. Spittle dripped from the side of his mouth. Face was red from exertion. They can't hear us, Iden said. Too much soundproofing in here and too much noise out there. Jace wiped his mouth. He opened like he was going to argue. He exhaled loudly. I know. Flopping back on his butt, Jace looked away from Iden. He's trying to pull himself together. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Finally, Jace cleared his throat. He turned to face Iden. Have you figured it out? Iden sighed. He hadn't figured anything out. And too busy pointedly yelling his head off. Yes, he remembered the mazes that lay out pretty well, but that didn't do them a lot of good. He shrugged and pointed at one of the pipes. I think if we take a left pipe there, it would keep us on this level. He dropped his hand. Trouble is, what good does that do us? Are we just gonna crawl back and forth until our knees are bloody? It's not like there's a way out up here. And he gestured at the kids and adults outside the maze. Can't see us or hear us. Wondering if we could just stay here. Maybe someone will come looking for us. Oh! I just had a thought.
Yeah.
HAPPS was probably prototype for staff bots.
You know, probably.
Because they only had human staff in the under construction story.
That is true. That is true. And you know what I noticed about the stories that take place in the Pizzaplex?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they've ever mentioned the Glamrots.
Yeah. So they probably don't have the Glamrock animatronics yet, but they did get shipped at the end of the one epilogue. No, wait, they did. They
Right.
did get mentioned. They did get mentioned. They in under construction. They had a concert. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But did they mention Monty and Rotsy? I don't know if
Yeah,
they
they
did.
mentioned them. They mentioned them.
Oh, okay. So they've been a thing for a while then.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to rack my memory on that one.
Jace beat him to it. Actually,
Mhm.
maybe they'll come. Maybe someone will come looking for us. Like who? Jace's question was almost whispered. He barely had the strength to ask. Our parents? His mouth twisted. Good point. I didn't try to think of something helpful to say. Jace beat him to it. Actually, maybe you're right. Maybe the Fazbear Entertainment people, workers will find us. Wouldn't they
No.
send someone in to repair the pipes?
No.
Eventually, Jace was silent.
No.
He stared at his sneakers. Eventually, he repeated. His face was pale. I didn't nodded. He had a feeling his face was pale as Jace's. I didn't press his hands against the pale blue plastic beneath them. I don't think we should stay here. Perhaps we may not be able to climb ladder. All he has to do is find an ascending pipe and he'll get up to this level eventually. If we stay here, he could box us in. Jace nodded. I remember a couple of junctions where there were at least 4 offshoots. If we got to one of those, we could rest and think some more. We have multiple escape routes if HAPPS finds us. Good idea. I didn't use his chin to gesture at the left pipe opening. I think that one will get us to one of those junctions. Jace nodded. I didn't cringe as he pushed himself onto his knees. When Jace didn't move, I didn't turn to look at his friend. Jace stared down at the bumper cars. I wish we'd taken out our frustration with the cars instead of coming in here. You and me both. Eden crawled toward the left pipe opening. He assumed Jace would follow him, which he did. The pipe they entered went straight for 50 feet or so. Then it took a big, gradual turn and started heading downward. Aiden didn't want to go down, so he quickly looked for an alternative route. When he spotted one, he turned that way. But he was brought up short in just a couple feet. You're blocked up by one of the two-way mirror safety barriers. Aiden gestured at the barrier. I don't remember that being here when we passed by here earlier. He looked around. I remember this pipe. It was a singed pipe, aqua with multicolored polka dots. Chase nodded. I do too. That wasn't here. Aiden frowned. That means HAPPS is close by. He damaged more tubes and they were closed off. That's not good. Aiden looked toward another offshoot. We can go this way, but I'm pretty sure it goes to the part of the maze that isn't connected to the main conduits. If we can't get to a main conduit, our options are going to be limited. Yeah, I figured that. Want to try anyway? We still might be able to find a junction where we can watch for HAPPS. Chase licked his fingers. His lips. Chase licked his lips. I sure wish I had some water. Me too. I sighed. Yeah, we might as well go that way. Pointed at offshoot and started crawling in that direction. You with me? Jace nodded. I continued on. I could hear Jace shuffle close behind. Nora let out a shriek when White's bright orange car hurtled into the side of Nora's hot pink one. The car hit her so hard that the impact literally rattled her teeth. Her head looked jerked far enough to the left that her earring gouged her neck. Hey! She protested. Wyatt didn't hear her. Not only was the hum of all the bumper cars loud, but the rock music blasting from the arena's speakers was even louder. Her voice was lost in the racket. Wyatt grinned at her. She gave him her best fuming, dirty look. She didn't bother him at all. He winked and turned his car to go after someone else. Nora clenched her steering wheel and stopped on her accelerator, heading after Wyatt. She needed some payback. Whizzing past a couple of her friends, Nora kept Wyatt in her sights as she aimed toward the arena's short outside wall. She had to skirt past the melee in the middle and sneak up on Wyatt. As she scooted along the wall, Nora glanced over the top of the wall. Behind it, she could see a labyrinth of dark plastic pipes that extended into the darkness in the distance. Something about the tangled plastic gave Nora the heebie-jeebies. She wondered what was back there. A scream pulled her attention to the arena. Out in front of her, Wyatt and his friends were ganging up on some smaller kids who were having trouble controlling their cars. Nora forgot about all the pipes as she stomped on the accelerator. She focused on Wyatt and aimed right at him.
Okay, like, what was the point of that?
Needless exposition to show. Whatever.
Well, like, we already know that they're friends, and, like, it was more effective when they were up there looking down, like, man, I wish we could be part of their world, or...
Aiden lost track of the number of pipes he and Jace wound through before they finally found a big junction that gave them a reasonable line of sight down every approaching tube. Multiple openings would provide several escape routes and would allow the boys to hear better. The more open the maze was, the less the pipes muted sound. Aiden shifted into sitting position. Chase did the same. Aiden pointed at the various openings in turn. That one is a ladder down. I don't think it's going to be a good option. HAPPS would just fling himself down after us. Pointed to the next two openings. Those are level, so we could go that way. But HAPPS could probably come after us pretty easily. Pointed at the last opening. I think going up that climbing pipe would be best. We already know HAPPS can't do ladders. I don't see how he can do climbing pipes without his foam hands. Chase looked at the climbing pipe opening. But what's up there? How do we know it won't be another blocked off area? Ben crawled to the opening and looked up the ladder. He exhaled loudly. Looks clear. He returned to his sitting position. He rubbed his knees. The boys didn't speak for several minutes. Finally, Chase broke the silence. I feel bad about kicking. Oh, now you do! Now you feel like you fucked up!
Now you remember, like, what... Because, like, when they initially saw him, they acted like they didn't remember that they just did it. So, like, what...
Chase stared at his feet, then looked up at Aiden. Do you think robots aren't vindictive? Aiden made a face. What, you think HAPPS is just trying to get back at us for kicking him? You think he turned his arms into weapons so he can exact bloody revenge? Aiden gave Jace an "are you kidding me" look. Tech, but he's a robot. Robots don't feel. Therefore, they can't be vindictive. You're making me like you less. Jace's mouth dropped. Yeah, of course you're right. I'm being dumb. I didn't punch Jace's arm. You're never dumb. You're the smartest person I know. And you know, like, what, 5 people? I didn't laugh. Good point. Sobered and poked Jace, but I mean it. You're smart. Not smart enough to get us out of here. I didn't shook his head. We'll figure something out. Although he tried to put confidence into the words when he spoke them, as soon as they were out of his mouth, Aiden could hear the lie. He realized that he didn't believe what a screeching scrape cut into Aiden's thoughts. The scrape was followed by a series of clunks. Then the distorted robotic voice. Ouch! With me! Jace stiffened. His eyes were huge. Aiden figured his eyes were just as big. His heart had started racing. Ouch! With me! Haps repeated. Sometime since they'd last seen him, Haps had lost more of his verbal functioning. Where lost had been, only a gravelly growl preceded the word out. The out sounded even more alarming than it had before. The command wasn't so much spoken in Hap's now contorted voice as it was barked, like it was being shouted by an irate dictator, one with the means to execute his subjects. His voice box is just broken, dude! I didn't manage to get his legs working. Kneeling, he scrambled to the climbing pipe opening. When Jace didn't move, when he continued to stare in the direction of Hap's approach, Aiden nudged him with the toe of his boot. Come on. Jace blinked and got on his knees. Crawled into the climbing pipe behind Aiden. Aiden reached for the first handhold. Good. He pulled himself up and found a foothold. Then he reached for the next handhold, and the next and the next. Crawled up the wall like a spider fleeing a ravenous bird. Didn't turn to look. It sounded like Jace was right behind him. As they'd hoped, the climbing tube ended up in a fork leading to 2 level pipes. So Aiden stopped to evaluate his choices. Shoulders tightened. Haps' insistent warp reflection seemed to bounce back and forth up the climbing pipe behind them. I didn't risk a look at Haps as he repeated his insistent, "Ouch! With me!" Words echoed through the climbing pipe and seemed to radiate outward into the other tubes. As soon as Aiden checked on Haps, he was sorry he had. Although Haps hadn't been able to manage to climb the ladder, he was having better luck with the climbing pipe. His knife-like hands were slashing at the pipe's walls. Those mutilated treads still had enough functionality to find purchase on the hand and footholds. Haps' progress was thankfully slow, but still progress. He was scaling the climbing tube. Come on! Aiden led Jason to the left pipe. Scurried along the pipe as fast as they could. When they rounded the first bend, they realized they'd chosen the wrong pipe. Blocked with a 2-way mirror security barrier. Turn around! Aiden shouted to Jace as soon as they saw the barrier. Turn around! Jace turned around, but he was panting in terror. Aiden understood why. Had Haps made it to the top of the climbing pipe? If he had, they'd be crawling right into the sharp metal shards that used to be Haps' hands. What choice did they have? Faster! Aiden urged Jace. He was nearly shoving Jace down the pipe. Aiden's long legs gave him more speed than Jace's short ones. Jace was slowing, really reluctant to face what may be waiting at the end of the pipe. Aiden shoved Jace out of the way and squeezed past him. Figured he had a better chance of facing off Haps than Jace did. Seconds after Aiden took the lead, they reached the junction again. At the same exact moment, the spear's left arm scored a gash in the junction's floor. The ripping sound made Haps' whirring and clanking even more hideous. Aiden felt like they were in the bowels of churning machinery designed to disassemble and pulverize whatever was put in it. As Haps' now serrated extender arm flailed towards Aiden, he found himself in the bottom of the pipe. His gaze darted around. Behind Haps, the security mirror was sliding over the top of the climbing pipe. That way was no longer an option. They couldn't go back the way they just came from because it went nowhere. Haps blocking the only other pipe entrance. Aiden looked up at Haps' gleaming metal arms. He froze when the arm started reaching for him. Suddenly, Jace let out a banshee yell. Lunging over the top of Aiden, Jace dove under Haps' outstretched arms, his Swiss Army knife in his fist. Jace jammed the blade into the open doorway in HAPPS' torso. Jace's attack on HAPPS galvanized Aiden. He knew Jace's little knife wasn't going to be doing much damage to HAPPS' circuits. But he remembered that the little robot didn't weigh that much. Maybe they could drive him back? If they could avoid getting slashed? Jace pulled his knife back and barely avoided getting stabbed when HAPPS jerked toward him. Aiden quickly slipped to his side and spun. He scissor-kicked HAPPS, shoving the robot against the junction's wall. Realizing what Aiden was trying to do, Jace lay flat and added his kicks to the attack. Between the two of them, they managed to shove HAPPS into the dead-end pipe, and they were able to knock him over. When HAPPS landed on his side, Aiden got to his knees. Maybe we can finish him off, Aiden thought. They should attack instead of fleeing. If they could get the plastic shell off his head, they might be able to rip out his circuitry. He fleetingly asked himself why he'd mastered jungling, hula hooping, jump roping, and yo-yoing. What did those talents do him now? It wasn't like he could pull a juggling pin out of his back pocket and whack HAPPS in the face with it. He could if he were a funky robot gesture.
Mm-hmm.
Jace must have had the same attack idea that Aiden had. He too shoved to his knees. His mouth was set, his jaw bunched. He was ready for battle. Together, the two boys advanced on the thrashing robot. They didn't get far. HAPPS might have been on his side, but his arms hadn't stopped moving. He waved them continuously, which effectively turned him into a robot propeller, shining sharp metal slice through the air in turbulent sweeps that were possible to completely avoid. One of HAPPS' swipes caught Aiden on the cheek. Hot pain seared his skin. Warm blood ran down his jaw. He jerked his head back. Go, Aiden! Jay shouted. He pointed at the other pipe opening. We need to get away while we can. As Jay spoke, HAPPS suddenly whirled loudly and flipped up onto his shreds. Go! Jace urged again. Aiden didn't argue. He turned around and crawled pell-mell into the other available pipe opening. Checking over his shoulder, Aiden saw that Jace was right behind him. And HAPPS was right behind Jace. The robot had wasted no time reorienting himself. Ouch! With me! He chanted as he rolled erratically out after them. Out with me! Out with me! Out with me! Out with me! That's all I'm imagining it sounds like. I need a drink after doing that noise with my mouth.
Yeah, I know. I hope your voice isn't gone after this.
I mean, it's my day off. Because it's like 1 a.m. now.
I still have to work tomorrow.
Why? Why didn't you go to bed? Why didn't you tell me to stop?
Because
This pipe was unfortunately a level pipe. Though Aiden and Jace were racing through it as fast as they could, HAPPS was having no trouble keeping up. The sounds of his humming motor and crunching treads chased the boys down the pipe. Aiden's mouth went dry at the thought of how close HAPPS' jagged metal limbs must have been getting to Jace's feet. The image of that metal piercing Jace's sneakers or his skin gave Aiden the strength to crawl even faster. The pipe took a sharp turn left, and it switched back immediately to the right. After the abrupt right, it jogged left again. In a left jog, the pipe opened to a platform. The top of a slide. Aiden lunged into the platform. At the same time, he reached and grabbed Jace by the shirt. He yanked Jace into his arms just as HAPPS lurched forward. His deadly blade-like appendages sweeping the air only a few inches from them. Hold on to me! Aiden shouted. He pushed off the platform with every bit of strength he had. The slide they'd found was a good one. It had a couple turns, but mostly it was steep and straight. In just a matter of seconds, shot them into a ball pit similar to the one they'd landed in just a couple hours earlier. Aiden could only hope the few seconds it had taken to get to the pit had been enough. He had a stinging feeling it hadn't been, but he didn't have time to think about his dread. As soon as they hit the plastic orbs, both Aiden and Jace started beating the balls aside, lunging their way through the colorful spherical sea. Aiden had his eye on a pipe opening at the other side of the pit. Unfortunately, though, they didn't reach it before HAPPS reached them. As Aiden's foreboding had predicted, HAPPS had come down the slide just as fast, probably even faster, than Aiden and Jace had. And when he'd come off the slide, it would be because he was more compact. HAPPS had been launched farther out into the pit than the boys had been. HAPPS also had no trouble plowing his way through the plastic balls. His mass shoved the balls aside like they were nothing. This is why HAPPS got to them before Aiden and Jace could get out of the ball pit. Aiden was in the lead. HAPPS got Jace first. Out with me. Haps crackled as he reached out to grab his quarry. Chase must have sensed that Haps was right behind him, because he immediately dove into the ball pit as if it was a lake and he could skim under its surface to get away. Would have been a decent plan, probably, if his feet didn't pop up when he dove. Haps' limbs were extended in his effort to grab Jace. When Jace's feet rose up out of the ball pit, Haps immediately tried to clutch the feet, but of course, his hands couldn't clutch. They could only slice. The razor-like spikes at the end of Haps' arms cut right through one of Jace's ankles, hacking off Jace's right foot roughly and crudely with so much
His
force
entire foot. His entire foot.
that the foot was
Okay.
torn free of Jace's ankle and spit aside as if by a chainsaw. The second...
It's just shredded metal. It should not be that sharp. And if it's grabbing...
It's moving like a propeller, though.
Oh, okay. Jesus.
The second the foot landed among the plastic balls with a plop, Chase's upper body erupted from the ball pit. Chase's mouth was open wide in a shriek that was so loud and so high-pitched, I wouldn't have been surprised if it cracked nearby mirror partitions. I immediately reached for Jace, grabbing at his friend's arm. He wasn't thinking. He had no plan. He wasn't reacting. He was just reacting. Or was that Haps was doing the same thing? It was faster than Aiden. When Jace's chest appeared from under the heavy ball pit, Haps grabbed for Jace again. The robot's now bloody knife hand slashed her, and Jace's shriek ratcheted even higher. I managed to hang on to Jace's forearm, pulling with him with all his might. I didn't hitch Jace from the pit. As soon as Jace was out of the pit, I didn't hook his arms under Jace's armpits. Then he levered himself into the nearest pipe. He didn't know if it was too late to save his friend, but he had to try. In just the few seconds since Jace's foot was amputated, he must have lost a massive amount of blood. I didn't have to get Jace away from Haps or it was going to be too late. Out with me! Haps persisted. I didn't yank Jace further into the tube. Jace continued to scream in pain. His eyes were bulging impossibly wide and his mouth was stretched into a grimace. Hang on, Jace. Aiden shouted. He threw himself backward along the pipe, hauling Jace with him. But again, he wasn't fast enough. Haps moved too quickly, and as he moved, he kept trying to get a hold of Jace. The shrill sound of metal on metal filled Aiden's ears as Haps brought both limbs together around Jace's lower body! Aiden was sure Haps was trying to pick up Jace, but of course his torn metal couldn't do that. All it could do was slice and shred. Aiden couldn't see what Haps was doing to Jace, but he could hear his bawling cries, and you could see Jace's face. So misshapen by pain it was almost recognizable. He's gonna be dragging just his upper body with him. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Aiden tried to hold his friend's gaze, willing him to stay alive. Behind Jace, the robot reached out again. With me. Haps repeated. Aiden pushed off the floor with the pipe with all his strength. Clutching his friend, he heaved himself backward, trying to snatch Jace out of Haps' range. But he couldn't do it. Haps thrashed forward, and Jace howled. As he did, blood poured from his mouth. His eyes blinked once. Aiden felt Jace's body stiffen in his arms, and he felt Jace go limp. Jace's eyes stared at nothing. He's dead.
Yeah, he's gone.
Aiden, frozen in disbelief and shock, held onto Jace's body. He locked his gaze on Haps. Out with me, Haps said. Aiden had no choice. He let go of Jace and crawled like a demon down the pipe. The next several seconds were nothing more than a sound of confusion. Was nothing more than a confusion of sound and sensation for Aiden. He couldn't make sense of anything he was experiencing. He was vaguely aware that he was crawling for his life, but the thought was just a dim perception that was outweighed by all the other information assaulting his overloaded brain. As if cascading down on him all at once, he felt tears spilling down his cheeks, bile filling his throat, snot dripping from his nose, sweat trickling down his back. blood pounding through his veins and pain flashing in his knees. Moving through all that, overwhelming grief made him want to howl like an enraged wolf. Underneath those primitive reactions, his mind could only offer one repeated thought: this can't be happening, this can't be happening, this can't be happening. Aiden's peripheral senses were working enough for him to be aware when Haps got close. He heard the metallic shredding sounds, and he registered a relentless whirling and then a chant of, "Out with me." Putting on as much speed as he could, Aiden shot through the pipes and found himself in another junction. 3 of the pipe openings in the junction were partitioned off. He had just one option. Thankfully, it was the ladder pipe. Just as Haps emerged from the pipe behind Aiden scrambled up the ladder rungs. Haps was so close that Aiden felt Haps' sharp metal edges graze leather on the sole of Aiden's left boot. Again with that wording, but quickly whipped his leg up, whimpering as he did. He couldn't contain the whimper. The image of Jace's disconnected foot filled Aiden with total mind-numbing hysteria. Aiden was devastated by the death of his friend, of course. The idea of getting dismembered, for some reason, was 100 times more mortifying than simply dying. He didn't want to go out the way Jace had. No way. Ladder pipe was a short one. Aiden didn't think it took him a full level, maybe a half level. Ladder pipe came to an end at a fork between 2 pipes. Again, however, when the pass was blocked, once more, Aiden had just one choice. Glancing down to be sure Haps was stopped at the bottom of the ladder, and started to duck into the open pipe. He hesitated when he saw that Haps was looking up at him. Haps had his round, white head tipped back, and his one functioning eye was gazing at Aiden intensely. The intent, Aiden thought, looked decidedly evil. But of course, that was crazy. As he told Jace, Haps wasn't capable of evil. He's just a robot with a job to do, and he was doing his job the best he could. He didn't care that the results of his efforts were carving up innocent kids, did he? Aiden shook his head, but he couldn't tear his gaze from Haps. Aiden watched. Haps tipped his head back into its usual positioning, and powered backward away from the ladder. Haps turned, slipped back into the ball pit, his butchered treads belching plastic balls up around him. Haps mowed right over the top of Jace's limp, lacerated body and disappeared from Aiden's view. He's going to find a way to get to me, Aiden said. As soon as he spoke, Aiden realized that there's no one to hear him. Jace was gone. I didn't get that. He just watched the murdering robot run over the top of his dead friend. Aiden was alone. He was talking to himself. Aiden had no idea where he was going as he crawled through the pipe. He and Jace had looked for a way out and hadn't found one. What could Aiden do? Aiden, I keep messing it up. He didn't know. But he knew he wasn't going to sit still and wait for Haps to come and shred him. He put his head down and crawled. Aiden wasn't sure how long he had crawled before he reached a fork. That was no longer a fork. One of the pipe openings in front of Aiden was blocked. The other was a gradual slide that curved out of sight. Aiden looked back over his shoulder. Should he retrace his steps and make his way back to the ball pit? If Haps was looking for him, Haps was no longer in the pit. And maybe the robot wouldn't have the reasoning capacity to return to a place Aiden had fled. There's only one problem with that idea. Aiden didn't want to return to the ball pit. Jace was in the ball pit. And Jace's blood was in the ball pit. No. Aiden couldn't go back and couldn't face going back to the ball pit. So left him with just one choice. He eased himself feet first into the gradual slide. Because he didn't know where Haps was. For all Aiden knew, the robot might have been waiting at the bottom of the slide. Aiden was in no hurry to get to the bottom of the pipe. So he let himself slowly downward, trying to ignore the way his imagination conjured up an image of Haps waiting at the bottom. The pipe Aiden was in, like so many others in this section of the maze, was walled by the two-way mirror. Aiden couldn't see through it easily, but he knew no one could see him. The slide passed by the back of the laser tag arena, and Aiden watched a couple boys creep around a fake boulder and ambush a couple girls. With their goggles on, the teens weren't easily recognizable, but Aiden was pretty sure they were in his science class. They weren't friends. He knew them. If only he'd managed to make more friends. If this hadn't been their own universe, guys that like Landon wouldn't have picked on them. And if guys like Landon had left them alone, Aiden wouldn't have gotten the black eye. If he hadn't gotten the black eye, maybe he wouldn't have wanted to escape into the maze. Maybe his whole life would have been different. Maybe Jace would still have a life. Aiden reached the bottom of the gradual slide in. He immediately cursed his vivid imagination. It had turned Aiden's fears into reality.
Chop, chop, chop.
HAPPS was coming along the pipe toward the ball pit at the bottom of the slide. He was just 20 feet from the pit. Swallowing a scream of terror, Aiden scrambled through the balls and crawled into the closest pipe. He clambered as fast as he could through the tube, trying to put as much distance as he could between himself and the pursuing robot. HAPPS' cheering sounds echoed behind Aiden. Chants reverberated through Aiden's chest. Out with me, HAPPS insisted. Aiden took a left turn and found himself in a climbing pipe. Nearly leaping up its sides, he grabbed for a handhold. He pulled himself upward. Below him, HAPPS clattered closer. Risking a downward glance, Aiden nearly lost his grip on the pipe when he saw HAPPS' one working eye look up at him. HAPPS began to ascend the pipe, like a demented spider. Aiden climbed faster. Wait, how is he climbing the climbing pipe? So can he just suddenly climb now? Okay.
Okay.
The top of the climbing wall, Aiden faced a junction of 3 pipes. He didn't stop to think about which way to go. He just crawled down the closest pipe, the one to the right. The scraping sounds behind Aiden told him that HAPPS wasn't far behind. Aiden's knees were screaming at him as he pounded through the pipe. It was getting harder and harder to move quickly. It felt like the skin over his kneecaps was raw. He was having trouble breathing too. Concentrating on fleeing HAPPS, Aiden hadn't noticed until now the tears had been cascading down his cheeks since Jace had died. Now his nose was plunged up from all the crying. He was gasping for air through his mouth. He could hear himself mewling and panting. And worse, he could hear HAPPS. The robot continued his chant. Out with me. Chant was... Actually, no, hold on. Out with me. Out with me. Out with me. Out with me. The chant was way too close. The chant wasn't the worst of the sounds trailing after Aiden. Truly appalling sounds were the nails on a blackboard rasp of HAPPS' jagged metal edges gouging the sides of the plastic pipe behind Aiden. He could all too clearly imagine what it'd feel like if HAPPS reached him. Almost near the end of the pipe he was in, Aiden spotted a sloping pipe. Although he was tempted to use it, he was pretty sure HAPPS could easily catch up to him on a slide. He kept going. He discovered this pipe ended up looping back around to the one he'd just been in. Almost. Just before Aiden reached the junction of the 2 pipes, he realized the pipe he'd just been in was now closed off. Obviously, HAPPS had damaged it enough to activate another safety barrier. Aiden glanced over his shoulder and yelped. HAPPS was only 15 feet away. Out with me, HAPPS said. The blood-stained metal of his killing arms reached for Aiden. Aiden had no choice now. He was nearly cornered. He quickly backtracked a couple feet and dove headfirst and down the sliding pipe. The second Aiden landed in the ball pit at the base of the slide, he didn't make the same mistake Jace had made. Aiden didn't try to swim through the pit. Instead, he immediately found his footing and turned to face the slide he'd just come down. He had to turn barely in time. HAPPS came catapulting off the end of the slide, and Aiden faced it. Because Aiden could see HAPPS' trajectory, though, he was able to fling himself out of the robot's path. When HAPPS hit the ball pit, he landed on his head. Aiden knew the robot would right himself quickly. It would take a few seconds. Aiden used every one of those seconds to his advantage. Rolling into a tight spring, Aiden launched himself across the ball pit, reaching for the end of the nearest open pipe. He was in the pipe and crawling for all he was worth before he heard HAPPS' whirring treads thump into the pipe behind him. Aiden was no longer aware of his body, he realized. He couldn't feel his knees anymore. He couldn't hear his breathing. It was as if his consciousness had transcended his physicality. He was no longer a boy crawling through a maze. He had a single-minded goal. Get away from HAPPS. Aiden crawled around the bend and let himself for an instant feel relief of having HAPPS out of his sight. When he looked at the way ahead, he was dismayed to see more safety barriers had gone up. He was at a junction, but he only had one choice. 2 of the pipes were closed off. Aiden crawled into the one available pipe. As soon as Aiden entered the pipe, he recognized it. He and Jace had been in this pipe twice, and Aiden knew it was a loop with only a couple of offshoots. He had to get to one of the offshoots before HAPPS got too close. Taking a quick glance over his shoulder, Aiden realized that his goal was easier said than accomplished. HAPPS was the closest he'd ever been. It was less than 10 feet away. Aiden put on the afterburners. Crawled faster than he ever crawled in his life. Crawled so fast by the time he approached the first offshoot, managed to get about 20 feet ahead of the relentless robot. He charged towards the offshoot with the first hope that he'd felt since Jace had died. If Aiden remembered right, this offshoot led to a ladder. HAPPS couldn't manage ladders. If Aiden could reach the ladder, he could. Aiden came to an abrupt stop. He reached the first offshoot. It was closed off. The safety partition barred the way. No, Aiden whispered. Out with me, HAPPS said. He was once again way too close. Aiden started crawling once more. The other offshoot was just around the curve up ahead. It didn't lead to a ladder, but it did lead to a long tunnel that had a lot of interesting intersecting pipes. Reaching that offshoot would at least give Aiden some options. HAPPS had been a living, breathing creature. Aiden was sure he would have been able to feel HAPPS breathing right behind him. As it was, Aiden kept expecting to feel HAPPS' jagged metal appendages slice into his foot at any moment. For some reason, Aiden was back in his body again. The muscles in his legs are knotted. His feet felt weird, as if they were curling up in dread of HAPPS' savage limbs. Aiden tried to ignore everything he felt. He knew that if he thought about what would happen, HAPPS would reach him. He wouldn't have the strength to keep crawling. He had to reach the other offshoot. Just as his body's sensations had returned, Aiden's auditory sensors came back online too. Aiden's auditory systems came back online too. That's a bit of a weird choice.
Has he been a robot this whole time?
I don't know, bro. Scott has a thing with making kids robots. He could once again hear his heavy breathing, heaving breathing. He could also hear the rhythmic thudding of his knees against the pipe's plastic. Of course, he could hear HAPPS clicks and whirs and grinds and resolute chant getting closer and closer. Just a few more seconds. Aiden thought the offshoot was right around the corner, but it wasn't. When Aiden sped toward where he expected the offshoot to be, his heart plummeted into his gut. The offshoot wasn't open anymore. Like the other one, it was now covered by a safety barrier. Aiden was trapped, and HAPPS was getting closer. Ouch with me, HAPPS ordered him. The robot's crackly voice was way too loud, which meant it was way too close. Aiden didn't look back to see just how close HAPPS was. He didn't want to know. Given no other choice, Aiden tore past the blocked offshoot. It was instinct to keep going, but Aiden knew his flight from HAPPS was futile now. With the offshoots blocked, Aiden was now caught in a closed-off loop. All he could do was go around and around in a circle. HAPPS' calamitous pursuit had been activating security barriers all along. Aiden had been essentially herded like an animal into a killing zone. He didn't know where to go, but still, he kept crawling. As Aiden crawled, he didn't allow himself to think anymore. If he thought, he'd have to ask himself questions that he didn't want to answer. How long could he stay ahead of HAPPS? How long would it be before HAPPS' out-of-control passage through the loop pipe would damage it enough to partition it off even more? How long would it be before Aiden died the same way Jace had? Aiden crawled through the pipe. Couldn't help but see kids beyond the pipe's plastic walls. And he realized he had gotten his wish. He was invisible.
Well, he's dead.
I honestly don't know. They really didn't deserve it because they were just stupid kids.
Yeah, like, I don't know. like, although, like, I really enjoyed, like, the last half of the story, like, the dismemberments and, like, suspense and, like, the chasing and the confusing tubes, but it has, like, a really, really slow build and,
Mm-hmm.
like, weird details that didn't need to be added, like that scene transition to, like, his
Nora.
not friends on bumper cars, yeah.
My throat is also sore because there's like no breaks, and I had to. I don't know why I chose to do that voice. I just felt I had to.
No rates. I don't know, this one's like a tragedy, it's like Haps is just doing his job. Honestly, it's a pretty good cover story. It's a better cover story than Lally's game. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think that this is a story that takes place after the Mega Pizzaplex like recently opened, and then Lally's game 20 years later.
Lally's game is supposed to be like 20 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel bad for Haps.
I'm gonna.